Chapter 36. The Land That Haunts the Soul. During the past half-year, a rather unusual forge had quietly been completed beside the dragon pit of House Targaryen. Aegon was meticulously preparing for the upcoming champion dragon battle. He intended to forge a massive two-handed sword of his own, and was now working alongside a Valyrian steelsmith, hammering a steel blank. Clang! Aegon stood barrel-chested, his muscular frame gleaming with a bronze sheen in the firelight. Gripping a large hammer, he struck the glowing hot sword blank again and again with steady, powerful blows. Beside him, the experienced Valyrian steelsmith tapped lightly with a small hammer on the anvil, each tap acting as a signal, prompting Aegon to follow with a heavy strike on the blade. Under their coordinated rhythm, the searing hot steel gradually shifted shape, slowly taking on the form of a massive sword. The alternating rhythm of heavy and light strikes echoed through the stuffy forge like a unique and captivating melody. The blank is cooling again. Let Tiamat heat it up once more, the smith said, glancing up at the sword blank and reminding Aegon at just the right moment. Aegon gave a small nod and, using tongs, carefully lifted the blank and placed it into a specially designed furnace. Outside the forge, Tiamat lay sprawled. At Aegon's command, she opened her jaws and released a continuous stream of blazing dragonfire into the furnace. The custom-built furnace was ingeniously crafted to concentrate the dragonfire precisely onto the sword blank. The Valyrian steel, which had begun to cool and lose its glow, was immediately reheated until it turned bright red and nearly translucent once again. Soon, the alternating rhythm of light and heavy hammering rang clearly through the forge once more. After several hours of careful forging, the two-handed greatsword, created from Daemon's twin halveswords and a generous amount of precious Valyrian steel, finally began to take shape. The Valyrian steelsmith turned to Aegon and explained, Prince Aegon, I've successfully fused the three most vital materials, Tiamat's dragonblood, dragonglass, and burning steel, with the aid of blood sorcery. The most difficult and critical part of the forging process is now essentially complete. What comes next is the 14-step annealing process specific to Valyrian steel. He gently lowered the nearly 2-meter-long sword into a trough filled with dragon oil. The moment the blade touched the liquid, fiery red patterns instantly emerged along its surface, glowing faintly with a captivating brilliance. Aegon leaned in, intrigued, closely studying the strange patterns now adorning the blade. The lines resembled winding rivers, fine, intricate, and meandering like flowing ribbons of water running through the steel. Reflected in the forge's firelight, the markings shimmered as if they might suddenly surge to life. Seeing Aegon's curiosity, the smith allowed himself a proud smile. Prince, take a look at these fine interwoven lines. These patterns are the result of the most advanced Valyrian steel forging technique we have on Burning Steel Peak. It's called Blood Dragon Steel, a level far beyond the ordinary Valyrian steel you see elsewhere. Blood Dragon Steel is harder, sharper, and more resilient, almost indestructible once forged. This special Valyrian steel is not sold to outsiders. Thank you for your hard work, Master Wormel, Aegon said at the right moment, offering polite praise, but inwardly, he couldn't help but grumble, this old man still refuses to teach me the blood sorcery used in forging Valyrian steel. Even this technique for forging special steel, he's kept it all to himself. Damn it. Wormel beamed at Aegon's compliment, stroking his thick beard. This greatsword needs to soak in dragon oil for 10 hours to cool naturally. There's no need for you to stay here, Prince Aegon. I'll have someone notify you when the next annealing phase begins. Aegon nodded, taking one last lingering look at the magnificent greatsword submerged in the oil before turning and slowly leaving the forge. He returned to the main castle's bathhouse to wash up, then changed into a robe of black and crimson. Fine gold thread was used to embroider an ornate band of patterns around the collar, and golden dragon motifs decorated both the chest and cuffs, making the robe look especially regal and lavish. After leaving the bathhouse, Aegon made his way to the castle gates. He had arranged to take a walk by the bay with his wife, Daenerys. With the Dragonlord duel drawing near, their united front was more important than ever, and there were indeed matters Aegon needed to discuss with her. On his way to the bay, he occasionally passed by castle servants. Prince Aegon, they all said, bowing respectfully whenever they saw him. At this point, Aegon was already the rightful heir of House Targaryen. With the support of the fully grown King Dragon, Tiamat, his power and standing now rivaled that of Aenar. Aegon walked leisurely through the main castle corridors, passing by the old attic he once lived in. Back then, it had been the marital home he and Daenerys shared after their wedding. Now, he had moved into a private tower of his own. Unknowingly, half a year had passed in the blink of an eye. As he walked along the corridor next to the attic, scenes from his wedding to Daenerys resurfaced in his mind. They came unbidden, vivid as if they had happened only yesterday. It had been an incredibly grand wedding. As a dragon knight bonded to a King-tier dragon, Aegon held a status of unmatched prestige, and many of the Dragonlord families of Valyria made a point to attend the celebration, offering their heartfelt blessings to the newlyweds. Even families from the Dragonlord Council symbolically sent their younger members to join the festivities. And when Aenar publicly declared Aegon as his heir during the wedding feast, the atmosphere reached a roaring climax. The heads of House Targaryen's two major vassal houses stepped forward in person, offering formal oaths of loyalty and pledging their allegiance to Aegon. Though it was his second wedding, it was by far the most unforgettable. Surrounded by a sea of admirers, Aegon and Daenerys, both dressed in ceremonial finery, completed the solemn rites of marriage according to Valyrian tradition. He still remembered the bridal chamber vividly, especially the moment he took Daenerys' virginity. It was a memory he savored even now. On that night, Daenerys had used her powers as the Lord of Dreams to transform their chamber into a breathtaking, dreamlike starfield. In that surreal setting, her abilities had heightened Aegon's senses many times over, making every sensation feel overwhelmingly vivid. Daenerys even manifested multiple dreamforms of herself, which simultaneously attacked Aegon from above, below, left, and right. To manipulate dream magic with such astonishing control, enough to affect reality itself, left Aegon in awe. As their intimacy deepened, the experience became so intense that he felt as though his very soul was about to ascend from his body. Aegon swallowed hard, dragging himself out of the sweet reverie. Slowly, he pulled his gaze away from the attic that had once been their newlywed home. Beautiful memories always linger, but there were more pressing matters he needed to discuss with Daenerys. After leaving the main keep, the steward Farlan, already informed of Aegon's schedule, had the carriage waiting. Farlan personally opened the door for him, and Aegon gave a subtle nod of thanks before stepping in. The carriage started moving slowly, heading toward the bay. Before long, it came to a steady stop at the foot of a hill overlooking the coastline. The vantage point was high, offering a panoramic view of the majestic Targaryen Bay. The last time Aegon had stood here, it had been with Daemon, Daenerys, and Daenerys. Back then, House Targaryen's first evacuation fleet had been busy loading supplies below. Now, those companions were gone. Aegon stepped down from the carriage and walked up the slope. After climbing for several dozen meters, he spotted Daenerys standing alone at the cliff's edge. She was gazing out across the eastern sea, the breeze gently lifting her silver hair, presenting Aegon with a side profile so serene and striking it resembled a painting brought to life. Seeing her so lost in thought, Aegon didn't call out. Instead, he quietly approached from behind. He slipped his arms around her waist, holding her gently, his hands brushing over her rounded belly. Daenerys had already sensed his approach the moment he drew near. Her dream magic had continued to grow stronger. Within a meter around her, her powerful mental energy was always active, and not even the subtlest movement could escape her awareness. She was even capable of turning dream imagery into reality at the cost of permanently sacrificing a portion of her own spiritual power. As Aegon touched her, Daenerys' lips curved into a faint smile. She turned her head slightly, rubbing her cheek against his neck, her eyes comfortably half-closed. Their long, silvery hair billowed and entwined in the sea breeze, like a pair of ethereal beings descended from the heavens, beautiful and surreal. They stood in silence for a while, enjoying their closeness. Then Daenerys spoke. Do you remember when we stood here with my brother, imagining the future? To Westeros, in the west. Aegon replied softly, planting gentle kisses on her neck, his touch tender and lingering. I've always wanted to go there, to conquer that land. To see our child born as a noble heir prince. I want all of Westeros to call out his name the moment he's born. Daenerys tilted her head back, fully surrendering to Aegon's kisses. Since her pregnancy began, it had been a long time since they'd shared such intimacy. But Aegon suddenly stopped. He pulled Daenerys into his arms so they were face to face, looking deeply into each other's eyes. Then, with unusual seriousness, he said, I've been thinking. Maybe I should stay here. In the Valyrian Peninsula. Daenerys, still caught in the haze of affection, blinked in surprise, and instinctively replied, Stay what? Her eyes flew wide open as she stared at him, filled with shock and confusion. Aegon met her gaze steadily. His look said clearly, this was no joke. You're insane. The Valyrian Peninsula is going to be destroyed. Daenerys stared at him in disbelief. Tiamat is dying. I think blood sorcery might be the only way to save her. Aegon released her gently, then turned away, looking out into the distance just as she had moments before. Far across the sea, in a land he could not forget, lay the place that still haunted his dreams. If you'd like to support my work and unlock advanced chapters, you can follow me on Patreon. Up to 20 chapters ahead for now. Patreon comp BlurryDream. BlurryDream creators thoughts. 6 comments 0 vote. Chapter 37, The Sea Serpent. Daenerys knew Tiamat's secret. The great dragon bore a terrible curse, one that slowly drained her life. To a dragon knight, a dragon was far more than just a mount. Once a dragon formed a spiritual bond with a Valyrian, it became as dear as blood kin, closer than a sibling, bound by a connection deeper than words. So when Daenerys learned that Aegon was considering staying behind to save Tiamat, she wasn't entirely surprised. And yet, she couldn't stop a wave of grievance from rising in her heart. Yes, grievance. She had been so full of joy, imagining a future where she and Aegon would travel to Westeros together, build a new home, perhaps even a new kingdom. How much time does she have left? Daenerys gently hugged Aegon from behind, resting her head on his back as she asked in a soft voice. At most, another 6 months, Aegon answered truthfully. He gently patted her hand resting on his, then added, but the reason I want to stay isn't only for Tiamat. Even if I win the champion dragon battle, the Dragonlord Council might not let us leave as easily as we hoped. But didn't the elders promise that if you won, they would let us go? Daenerys looked up at him, puzzled. The Dragonlord Council won't stop us openly. But they might send people to ambush us in secret. If anything happens, the elders won't intervene, Aegon said as he turned to face her. He gently cupped her cheeks, his gaze warm and resolute. As long as I remain in Valyria, they won't dare to make a move. I'll join Bloodsource Peak. And with a King Tie dragon at my side, that alone will be enough to make them hesitate. Hearing that, Daenerys clung to him tightly. First, we need to get you and the child safely off the Valyrian Peninsula, Aegon said as he softly stroked her back, sighing with quiet resignation. After that, we'll see what happens. If it really comes down to it, I'll do whatever it takes to leave too. After discussing that crucial matter, Aegon waited until her emotions had settled. Then, as they always did, the two of them walked hand in hand along the golden sands of the bay. Their shadows stretched long in the light of the setting sun. A few days later, the forge was abuzz with activity. Aenar, Aegon, Daenerys, and others had all gathered there. Today was the day Aegon's Valyrian greatsword would be completed. Everyone's gaze was fixed on the blazing forge, full of anticipation. Master Wormel stood intently focused. He slowly crouched down and carefully pulled a massive sword from beneath the red-hot forge, where it had been buried in dragonbone ash. As he moved, the ash trickled off like fine silver sand, revealing intricate layers of blood-red patterns across the blade, like veins of living fire winding over its surface, glowing faintly in the light. All eyes were immediately drawn to it. The sword was a striking 2 meters long, with a broad and heavy blade. Its edge gleamed with a cold, piercing light that shimmered like it could cut through steel. The hilt was wrapped in intricately carved dragonbone. Wormel held the greatsword with both hands, his face beaming with undisguised pride. He took a special quenching liquid and carefully rinsed the blade. Clear water flowed slowly down, washing away the last remnants of ash and residue. Once cleaned, the blade radiated an even more chilling brilliance. The already intricate blood patterns now shone with vivid clarity, as if they were flowing. The blade's surface gleamed like a mirror, reflecting those standing nearby. The sharp glint of the steel was so intense it almost stung the skin. When the cleaning was complete, Wormel, visibly moved, respectfully presented the finished greatsword to Aegon. His voice trembled slightly. Your Highness, the sword is complete. I have fulfilled the task. Thank you, Aegon replied simply and firmly. No extra words. His eyes were already fixed on the newly forged weapon. He reached out and gripped the hilt, lifting the greatsword with steady strength, testing its weight. Fortunately, it was still within his control. Valyrian military swordsmanship was known for its bold, sweeping techniques, lethal on the battlefield. With a weapon like this, such techniques would become even more devastating, capable of cutting a path through enemy lines with brutal force. But that wasn't the sword's only purpose. At the base of the hilt was a threaded attachment, designed to be screwed onto a spear shaft. It allowed the sword to convert into a lance with ease. Nearby, a servant stood respectfully, holding a dragon lance shaft. The shaft was nearly 4 meters long, thick and sturdy. Aegon took it and, with practiced ease, twisted the sword into place. Instantly, a uniquely crafted dragon lance came into full view. He tested its feel in his hands. The weapon was undeniably heavy. He tried a few swings on the ground but found it difficult to maneuver freely. Of course, that wasn't its intended use. The dragon lance wasn't designed to be wielded on foot. Its true function was to be mounted on a locking mechanism atop the dragon's back. When two dragons closed in during aerial combat, the rider could simply follow the track of the mount and thrust it forward with force, no need to lift or swing it by hand in the air. Aegon then detached the greatsword and stepped outside to an open training space. Gripping the hilt with both hands, he began to move. Each swing was sharp and fluid, showcasing his practiced technique. In clash strikes, the greatsword cut through the air like a crashing wave of steel. In sliding strikes, it flowed like a serpent in motion. In parry strikes, the blade rebounded at the moment of contact, deflecting an imagined attack and opening space for a swift counter. Good, good. Aenar applauded with enthusiasm, his eyes filled with pride and admiration for Aegon's flawless swordsmanship. With a powerful swing, Aegon raised the greatsword high and brought it crashing down. A thunderous boom rang out as the blade split the ground, carving a deep fissure through the earth. Dust flew, and the land trembled beneath the force. He smoothly pulled the sword back, grounding its tip as he steadied his breath. Then he smiled and said, "A custom-made weapon really does feel different. I'll call this greatsword Bloodfire. It will earn its name in the coming battle against the Dragonlords." Ha ha. Now that's the spirit. That's how a son of House Targaryen should be. Aenar laughed heartily. But Daenerys, standing to the side, frowned at her father. "You always praise him. Just don't let him grow arrogant and underestimate his opponents." Aegon chuckled too. "Look down on them strategically, respect them tactically, that's the right way." He gestured for everyone to follow him to the back of the forge, where Tiamat's dragon nest lay nearby. By now, Tiamat's body had grown well beyond 200 meters in length. The life code trait didn't weaken her vitality, on the contrary, it had massively accelerated her growth. To illustrate, if a normal life cycle spans 100 years, someone affected by the negative effects of life code might live through their entire life in less than a year, aging, declining, and dying at terrifying speed. Tiamat had just passed her prime and was now slowly entering old age. The bone armor along her body had thickened to over half a meter, offering defense rivaling solid steel. Her once sleek dragonhide now showed visible folds and creases. The upcoming Dragonlord battle would strike during Tiamat's peak. Afterward, her decline would be swift and inevitable, the twilight of her life already on the horizon. When Tiamat saw Aegon approaching, she let out a lazy huff, her manner utterly relaxed and unbothered. Aegon looked at her and felt a wave of emotion rise in his heart. "You're the one who lives freely, without all the mess of politics and fear. Not even your own ending weighs on you." He leaned the dragonlance against her massive body, then climbed up using a rope ladder, gripping with both hands and feet. Once on her back, he stood steady and hauled the 7-meter-long lance up, slotting it into a specially made mounting clamp. He tested the fit by pushing and pulling the lance back and forth. It held firm, no issues. "Take off, Tiamat," Aegon shouted. At his command, Tiamat let out a deep, resonant roar. She rose to her feet, thundered forward on powerful hind legs, and after a long run, spread her vast wings. With a surge of wind, she took to the sky and soared straight upward into the clouds. Daenerys raised a hand to her forehead, squinting against the bright sun as she followed Aegon with her gaze. High above, Aegon and Tiamat practiced aerial charges and thrusts with the dragonlance, moving in perfect sync. "Daughter, has Aegon said anything to you lately? About other plans?" Aenar shielded his eyes with his hand, gazing skyward, his tone casual as he asked. Daenerys's expression flickered with surprise. "No, why? Did something happen?" Aenar kept his eyes on the sky. "I saw that Aegon sent his guild manager, Ramon, to secretly stay in contact with Bloodsource Peak." Daenerys smiled faintly and replied easily, "He's probably making arrangements for how we'll evacuate the peninsula after he wins the Dragonlord battle." "Is that so?" Aenar raised an eyebrow, glancing at her. "Of course it is. I'm your daughter, would I lie to you?" Daenerys pouted, feigning indignation. Yes, Aenar sighed and nodded quickly, surrendering with a helpless smile. Aegon and Tiamat trained through the entire morning in the sky. When they finally descended, Aegon joined Daenerys and Aenar for lunch in the dragon pit. That afternoon, Aegon planned to fly to the city of Oros. At one of Oros's seaports, a dragon knight named Jaziz of House Valyries had recently captured a rare kraken. When Aegon heard the news, he didn't hesitate, he immediately ordered House Targaryen to purchase the creature at great expense. Tiamat's greedy feast talent was currently at 7/10. After devouring the 3 dragons from House Aurelian, it had plateaued. But now, with a kraken corpse several dozen meters long, there was enough mass to raise her feast level to 8/10. Once preparations were complete, Aegon mounted Tiamat and departed from House Targaryen's dragon pit. Tiamat flew at full speed. With each massive beat of her wings, deafening winds howled around them. The rushing air roared like crashing waves, surging in relentless waves that battered the ears. Aegon quickly activated the windshield in front of him, made from steel and enchanted glass. He had specially designed this windscreen for long-distance flights. Without it, the powerful airflow would tear a person apart before they completed a single journey. Once, Tiamat's flight speed had lagged behind Dreamshade's. But now, at over 200 meters in length, each beat of her wings produced more thrust than several of Dreamshade's flaps combined. Tiamat now far outpaced Dreamshade, so much so that the gap between them had become a difference of orders of magnitude. Oros wasn't heavily populated with Dragonlord families, but the Dragon Knight Jaziz of House Valyries was locally well known. House Targaryen had already paid in full for the Kraken's carcass. When Aegon arrived, everything was proceeding in order. Jaziz led Aegon and Tiamat into a drydock at the harbor. There, Aegon laid eyes on one of the few creatures in the world whose size could rival a dragon, the Kraken. It looked like a monstrous squid, nearly 100 meters long. Its immense body glistened with a strange red sheen under the torchlight. Charred wounds still marred its flesh, evidence of the fierce battle that must have been waged to bring it down. House Valyries had clearly paid a high price for its capture. Once the handover was complete, Aegon ordered Jaziz to clear all personnel from the drydock. Tiamat, wasting no time, began devouring the Kraken's corpse with hunger and gusto. Only 2 days remain until the champion dragon battle. Every bit of strength is a step toward victory, Aegon thought, watching with satisfaction as Tiamat's greedy feast climbed to 8/10. If you'd like to support my work and unlock advanced chapters, you can follow me on Patreon. Up to 20 chapters ahead for now. Patreon comp BlurryDream. BlurryDream creators thoughts. 5 comments 0 vote. Chapter 38, The Dragonglass Dagger. Inside the shipyard, the sound of savage chewing echoed now and then, flesh being torn apart and then ground between powerful jaws, a noise that sent shivers down the spine. Aegon and Jaziz stood together just outside. Care for one. Jaziz offered Aegon a stick of fragrant resin, a potent kind of tobacco favored by Valyrian nobles. Aegon gave a small shake of his head and raised a hand to decline. Seeing this, Jaziz smiled faintly, tucked the resin back into his sleeve, and leaned in slightly. I heard you've been paying top coin for high-grade magical creature corpses. The mother of dragons really has a unique appetite. Aegon simply gave a thin smile and said nothing. Tiamat's tendency to devour other dragons was no secret. On the Valyrian Peninsula, it had long been widely known. Well, a dragon's still a kind of magical beast, after all, Jaziz went on, gesturing animatedly as he spoke. And speaking of that, I happen to have a dragon I'd like to sell you. You won't even need to spend a single copper. In fact, House Valyries will pay you generously. So, are you interested? Aegon watched him with quiet amusement, as if evaluating both the offer and the theatrics that came with it. Sounds almost too good to be true. Jeziz's smile brightened instantly. Of course it's true. This dragon is fat and strong, sure to please the mother of dragons. It's just that. Aegon cut in, just that the dragon belongs to your rival house, doesn't it? In ancient times, House Valyries and House Valentine of Castle Oros had once been close kin, but over time, they had become fierce commercial and political rivals. By the present day, the two houses had become bitter enemies. Aegon had thoroughly investigated Jeziz's background before even entering talks with House Valyries. Prince Aegon, you're as sharp as they say, Jaziz laughed. But rest assured, this won't cause trouble for you or the mother of dragons. You'll get the corpse, and our house's friendship besides. How do I know this isn't a trap from the Dragonlord Council? Aegon fixed him with a sharp gaze. Dragon hunting on the island is a major crime. I've planned for that. As soon as the hunt begins, I'll send all my sons to the main fortress of House Targaryen as foster children. If you win the champion dragon battle, your prestige as champion dragonlord will be untouchable. No one will risk challenging you over something like this. Jaziz laid out the plan without hesitation. After a moment's thought, Aegon replied, "From this moment on, stay within my sight. I'll take care of House Valentine's dragon for you." Jaziz was visibly thrilled, grabbing Aegon's hand with both of his. "No problem. It's my honor to fight by your side. I'll immediately arrange to send the boys to House Targaryen. I know the dragon battle is in 2 days, and tomorrow, House Valentine has a fleet scheduled to sail with critical cargo. That'll be the perfect time to strike." Aegon gave a slight nod. "Let's hope this is the start of a solid alliance." "You won't be disappointed," Jaziz replied earnestly. As night fell, Aegon stayed in the shipyard with Jaziz by his side. The two drank together, then rested, quietly awaiting the signal from House Valyries. The next day, the Valentine fleet departed from Castle Oros on schedule. Once the ships had sailed far from the mainland and into the open sea, Aegon and Jaziz mounted their dragons and silently circled ahead of the fleet's path. Then the hunt began. Tiamat and Jeziz's silver dragon charged straight at the two adult dragons escorting the fleet. At the peak of her power, a dragonlord like Tiamat was far beyond anything a pair of ordinary adult dragons could withstand. The outcome of the battle was never in question, it was over in a matter of moments. With the enemy dragons eliminated, Jaziz took charge of the fleet assault. They had no intention of capturing it, too risky. Instead, they staged the scene to resemble an accidental sinking. No survivors, no witnesses, and no trail left behind. Tiamat dove repeatedly, tearing into dragon flesh as she feasted. On Aegon's real-time data panel, the greedy feast skill ticked up to a full 10 out of 10. If she wanted to evolve further through devouring, the next target would have to be a dragonlord. Thanks to Aegon's overwhelming support, like a dragon crossing the river, House Valyries had successfully crippled House Valentine's strength. And Tiamat gained 2 more layers of greedy feast in the process. House Valyries would also pay a handsome sum in compensation for Aegon's assistance. The dragon hunt was a complete success. Upon returning to House Targaryen, Aegon saw the 2 legitimate sons of House Valyries, who had already been delivered to the main keep by Dragonback during the night. Before the gathered members of House Targaryen, Aenar welcomed the children as foster sons and formally accepted the role of their godfather. There was now only 1 day left until the champion dragon battle. After returning home, Aegon took a long, restful sleep. The next morning, he was tended to with care by Daenerys and Ilya. He donned his fish-scale steel armor, took up the newly forged bloodfire Valyrian steel sword, and received a special backpack handed over by a Targaryen tailor. Inside the backpack was a simple parachute, hurriedly crafted by the family's master tailor and yet untested. With the dragon battle looming, Aegon had no choice but to treat it as a last resort means of survival. Together with Aenar and the others who had been waiting, Aegon made his way to the Targaryen family's dragon pit. Under the expectant gazes of the entire household, Tiamat slowly unfurled her immense wings and launched into the sky. Daenerys rode Dreamshade like a flickering mirage, gracefully keeping pace beside Tiamat. Valyrian and another dragon of the house followed close behind as the group of dragons soared toward the grasslands of Valyria. To the northeast of Valyria, beyond the 14 Flames, stretched a vast, boundless grassland. According to historical records from the Freehold, this was the ancestral land where the earliest Valyrians had lived a pastoral life. Led by the sage Pan, those nomadic Valyrians had entered the region of the 14 Flames, thus beginning the long and glorious era of the Dragonlords. Now, across the plains, tents had been pitched in neat but scattered formations, providing shelter for the gathered spectators. Many dragons rested on the cliffs of Ancestral Peak, the nearest height to the grasslands. Some held their heads high, others crouched low, quietly observing the scene below. The Dragonlord Council, along with many members of the Freehold's great Dragonlord houses, had gathered on the viewing platform of Ancestral Peak. With an unmatched vantage point of the entire plains, it was the best possible location from which to watch the champion dragon battle. Roar! A deep, resounding dragon's call tore through the blue sky as Tiamat's massive, overwhelming form soared above the plains. Her body stretched close to 300 meters, 10 times the size of an average dragon. Whether among the crowd on the plains or the onlookers atop Ancestral Peak, awe swept through the masses, and gasps and exclamations rippled outward like waves. The mother of dragons is growing at an unbelievable rate. The head of House Eddarian exclaimed in shock. Could devouring its own kind really make a dragon grow faster? Another family head murmured to himself. If you have an old dragon, try feeding it to a young one, someone muttered from the side. You're all insane, the head of House Aurelian snapped irritably. At the center of the grasslands, a golden dragon more than 200 meters long lay sprawled on the ground. This was Idas, the golden-scaled dragonlord of House Valyrian. Sensing Tiamat's provocative arrival, Idas raised his massive head and let out a thunderous roar toward the red dragon in the sky, the sound shaking the earth. Then, with a powerful flap of his golden wings, Idas began to sprint across the grass, building up speed. Amid deafening roars, he surged into the sky. The crowd below erupted in cheers, shouting for the champion dragonlord. Even before the battle had begun, the atmosphere had reached its peak, cheers and cries blending into a tide of sound that rolled across the plains. Aegon stared solemnly at the golden-scaled dragonlord. Though slightly smaller than Tiamat, the opponent's combat experience was unquestionably superior, which could very well offset their difference in size. At that moment, on the viewing platform of Ancestral Peak, a figure slowly materialized from a swirl of red fragments. It was Pan, the most mysterious and venerated elder of the Freehold, deeply respected among Valyrians. His steps were steady as he walked across the air itself, ascending slowly toward the sky above the grasslands. Though his movements seemed unhurried, in just a few paces he had positioned himself squarely between the two great dragonlords. Now, the golden dragonlord circled to his left, and the red dragon Tiamat hovered to his right. Both mighty dragons had quieted their previous roars, awaiting the elder's announcement with solemn stillness. Pan's expression was grave. He slowly drew an ancient-looking dragonbone dagger from his waist and, without hesitation, sliced open his palm. Crimson blood flowed instantly from the wound, and with a flick, he scattered the blood into the sky. In an instant, the droplets burst into mist, expanding rapidly into a dense blood fog. The crimson haze spread outward, forming a colossal ring several kilometers wide, casting a vast dome over the plains below. During the dragon battle, neither dragon may leave this blood ward. This is the only rule. Breaking it will mean defeat. Pan's voice, as melodic as ever, still rang out with perfect clarity, reaching every ear present. Then he raised his voice slightly, solemnity filling his tone. Today, I am honored to present to the ancestral spirits the golden-scaled dragonlord of House Valyrian, Idas, who holds the record for the most consecutive victories in the history of the Freehold. Idas. Idas. The crowd below erupted again, their passion stoked by Pan's rousing words. Wave after wave of cheers surged skyward, so loud that even Aegon, hundreds of meters above, could hear them clearly. Pan extended his right arm, proudly pointing toward the imposing red dragon, and declared. And this one is the new blood of the Freehold, a dragonlord newly returned from the sacred 14 flames, the youngest and largest mother of evil dragons, Tiamat. The ancestors dwell in the depths. The dragonlord's blood has been offered. The champion dragon battle begins. If you'd like to support my work and unlock advanced chapters, you can follow me on Patreon. Up to 20 chapters ahead for now. Patreon comp BlurryDream. BlurryDream creators' thoughts. 6 comments 0 vote. Chapter 39. The Brutal Champion Dragon Battle. As the elder declared the beginning of the great battle, his figure dispersed like crimson maple leaves, drifting gently before finally vanishing into the air. Aegon gripped the dragon lance tightly, its spearhead formed by the bloodfire sword. Above, Tiamat circled restlessly through the skies, searching for the right moment to strike. On the opposite side, Idas's dragon rider was just as cautious, making no move to lunge at Tiamat straightaway. Though Tiamat was several dozen meters larger than the golden-scaled dragonlord, that size didn't give her a clear advantage in a direct clash. At the moment, the golden dragonlord was flapping with full force, flying in an arc behind Tiamat. The larger the dragon, the harder it was to maneuver, so this was a tactic that wasn't difficult to see through. Aegon tilted his head slightly, casting a glance over his right shoulder at the golden dragon. His fingers unconsciously brushed the backpack at his back. The parachute inside, untested, was his last resort if things went wrong. High above, two massive beasts, each hundreds of meters long, circled through the sky thousands of meters up. They chased and maneuvered, testing each other's speed. The gap between them slowly but steadily narrowed. Below, the audience held their breath. Everyone's head was tilted skyward, their eyes wide with anticipation. Dozens of faces stared upward like a cluster of cats mesmerized by a dangling toy, tracking every motion of the two titans in the sky. On the viewing platform atop Ancestral Peak, Pan's form gradually took shape once more. Elder, the head of House Edarian asked respectfully, Which side do you think stands a better chance of winning? Pan's expression remained unreadable as he watched the two behemoths. He replied calmly, "It doesn't matter to me who wins. No matter the outcome, one Dragonlord will join our grand plan either way. We are the true victors." The head of House Aurelian chuckled at that and praised, "Your strategy is truly brilliant, Elder, absolutely brilliant. House Valyrian never bows to kindness, only to strength. But now, the mother of dragons, Tiamat, is the perfect hammer, she'll shatter their brittle shell of pride." Pan paid him no mind. His gaze remained fixed on the aerial battlefield. "Look, they're closing in. The fight's about to begin," someone exclaimed. High above the plains, Tiamat's heavy bone armor made her slower to maneuver. The Golden Dragonlord spotted his chance and swooped in behind her. As he prepared to unleash a powerful blast of dragonfire, Tiamat suddenly lashed out with her massive, muscular tail, performing a dangerous, mid-air J-turn. With that single motion, she pulled away from the pursuing Golden Dragonlord, gaining significant distance. The spectators, who had traveled from across the world to witness this spectacle, cried out in amazement. Such an acrobatic maneuver seemed impossible for a dragon of Tiamat's enormous size, more like a stunt from a performance than a battlefield tactic. But Tiamat's astonishing moves weren't finished yet. She abruptly raised her head and upper body, lifting at a steep 110-degree angle. Then, flipping her entire form over, she rotated until her belly faced the sky and plunged downward in a sharp, controlled dive. This sudden shift in orientation allowed her to aim her skull squarely at the Golden Dragonlord now trailing below. Without the slightest hesitation, seizing the moment, Tiamat, at Aegon's command, began channeling her breath. In just a second or two, she completed the necessary motion to unleash it. A pillar of fire, molten and incandescent like lava, exploded from her jaws, crashing down with overwhelming force toward the Golden Dragonlord. Cries of astonishment erupted across the plains as the crowd watched the searing column of flame tear through the sky. But the golden-scaled Dragonlord was not so easily defeated. In an instant, he dropped his left wing and lifted his right, twisting his massive frame into a sideways roll, his body now vertical to the earth. The pillar of flame screamed past, just barely missing his exposed underbelly. The Golden Dragonlord believed he had narrowly avoided the blast, but what he didn't anticipate was that Tiamat was unlike any ordinary dragon. Her breath attack was far longer in duration. Just as he dodged to the side, Tiamat swiftly turned her head, once again directing the blazing fire toward his exposed belly. A thunderous boom echoed across the sky. The explosion rocked the Golden Dragonlord. The flames struck directly against his abdomen, blowing apart one of his hind legs and shredding scales in every direction. Blood gushed from the wounds in a torrent. The scene was brutal and stunning. The burst of Tiamat's attack was brief, but devastating. In that moment, she was falling through the sky in a freefall, her back toward the ground. If she didn't stop the attack now and stabilize herself, she'd crash to the earth like a falling mountain. Roar! The Golden Dragonlord unleashed an earth-shaking bellow. Some of it came from pain, but far more was raw fury. As the reigning champion Dragonlord, his pride had just been dealt a humiliating blow. To be injured first in the opening exchange was a disgrace he couldn't tolerate. In the skies above, Tiamat began to spin rapidly, trying to right herself into a forward-facing position to regain control of her flight. And such a perfect opportunity would never be wasted. The Golden Dragonlord slammed his massive wings downward, diving like an arrow loosed from a bow, straight toward Tiamat. The golden-scaled Dragonlord was met head-on by an enormous red dragon tail, already fully coiled and waiting to strike. Tiamat had clearly prepared the blow well in advance, and executed it with ruthless precision. Her massive tail whipped through the air with terrifying speed, so fast that it left a misty vacuum at the tip from sheer force. The blow, propelled by tremendous momentum, had clearly reached supersonic velocity. But the Golden Dragonlord, burning with rage, chose to take the hit head-on. He charged through the strike, determined to close in and deliver a devastating counterattack to the Red Dragon. Tiamat's tail collided directly with the Golden Dragonlord's head. Boom! A thunderous explosion tore through the sky. The sound was deafening, so loud it felt like it might rip the heavens apart. The shockwave burst outward from the point of impact, and Aegon, riding atop Tiamat, took the brunt of it. The blast rocked through his body, his insides seemed to vibrate violently from the force. Before he had time to recover, the Golden Dragonlord's colossal body came crashing down, bearing straight toward him like a falling mountain. The immense air pressure, combined with the sheer bulk of the beast blocking out the sun, overwhelmed Aegon completely. He shut his eyes in despair. There was no time, no room to act. Even the parachute he'd prepared as a last resort was now completely useless. But Tiamat felt Aegon's fear. She sensed the danger pressing down on him and let out a defiant roar before twisting her massive body in desperation. From the ground and the viewing platform atop Ancestral Peak, everyone could see it. They could hear it. The Mother of Dragons was frantically trying to save her rider. She twisted her body like a creature possessed, contorting until she was nearly vertical, perpendicular to the ground. Her bones groaned audibly under the strain, dragged by the sheer force of her own muscles. The sound was as harrowing as it was inspiring. Some of her bones cracked under the stress. Shattered splinters of dragonbone pierced through her own flesh, jutting out from her skin in a gruesome display. The effort was clearly agonizing. But it worked. Tiamat's maneuver brought her just out of the Golden Dragonlord's path. And the Golden Dragon, stunned from the tail strike, didn't follow up with another attack. At that crucial moment, Aegon gritted his teeth and unfastened the safety straps securing him to the saddle. He gripped the bloodfire sword, now detached from the lance, with both hands. At that instant, Aegon had let go of all fear. He was going all in. Tiamat had thrown herself off balance to save him. She was now in a full nosedive, spiraling toward the earth. If Aegon stayed aboard and did nothing, both he and Tiamat were doomed. So, with steady hands, he swung the massive sword in a wide arc behind him, slashing at the passing red dragon's flank. Then, using the momentum of the swing, he launched himself toward the Golden Dragonlord. Tiamat continued her rapid descent, plunging toward the ground. Aegon's sword struck home. The giant bloodfire blade pierced deep into the golden dragon's hide. Aegon grabbed hold of the embedded sword and used it as an anchor to secure himself atop the enemy's back. The Golden Dragonlord let out a pained howl. The tail strike had left him dazed, but this fresh wound brought him crashing back to his senses. He flapped his immense wings furiously, struggling to stabilize himself. With a sudden shift, he leveled out of his dive and began climbing skyward again, pushing desperately to return to the upper air. Boom! With a deafening roar, Tiamat's massive form smashed into the ground like a falling meteor. The impact blasted a crater into the center of the plains, sending dirt and dust flying in all directions. For a moment, the crowd could only assume the worst. Tiamat, the Mother of Dragons, had been defeated. Even if she had survived the impact, the sheer force of the crash should have killed her rider, Aegon, outright. But when those closer to the crater looked up at Tiamat's back, they were stunned. She was alone. Where did the Mother of Dragons rider go? As confusion rippled through the crowd, the Golden Dragonlord had already climbed back into the sky, circling high above the plains. And on his back, there was a figure. Clutching a massive two-handed sword, the rider charged like a predator. Aegon lunged toward the back of the Golden Dragon's rider, striking like a tiger going for the kill. The dragon rider of House Valyrian was terrified. In all his decades of experience with dragon combat, he had never encountered an opponent as reckless, fearless, and unrelenting as Aegon. In his heart, he could think of only one word to describe him: suicide warrior. Because no one had ever survived on another rider's dragon. Even among the dragon riders of House Valyrian, no one would dare to casually unstrap their safety harness in flight. But Aegon had. And now, death was bearing down on him from above. Aegon dared to do what no one else would. The moment a flash of blood-red light swept through the sky, the head of the dragon rider from House Valyrian was severed cleanly from his shoulders, his eyes still wide with confusion and fear as it tumbled downward toward the earth. Almost at the exact moment he struck the killing blow, Aegon leapt off the golden dragon's back without hesitation, plummeting toward the ground at breakneck speed. The Golden Dragonlord, slow to comprehend what had happened, was completely bewildered. In just an instant, the spiritual link between him and his rider had vanished, cut off without warning. He hadn't even realized an enemy dragon rider had climbed aboard him. With a dragon of his size and scale, the weight of a human was barely noticeable, especially while flying at high speed. His thick armor-like hide made it nearly impossible to sense such a presence. From the ground, the spectators could only see a severed head fall from the golden dragon's back, followed immediately by a human figure leaping after it. Then came the agonized wail of the Golden Dragonlord. Roar! Roar 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 roar. The massive dragon rolled and twisted madly in the air, completely unhinged, unable to comprehend what had happened, why his rider had died so suddenly. A silver parachute blossomed open in the sky at just the right moment. Suspended beneath it, Aegon drifted slowly downward, swaying gently in the wind. Tiamat, broken and battered, began crawling toward him. Her hind legs were shattered from the fall, but she still dragged herself forward, loyal to the end, wanting only to protect her rider. After a fit of frenzied, incoherent roaring, the Golden Dragonlord seemed to snap. Mindless with rage, he suddenly dove straight for Tiamat below. Seeing this, Tiamat paused in her effort to greet Aegon's descent. She narrowed her golden eyes and fixed them on the oncoming dragon. A spark of fierce excitement glinted in her gaze, and she slowly ran her tongue across her snout. A fight on the ground. That's my favorite. Tiamat's wild exhilaration rang loud and clear in Aegon's mind. If you'd like to support my work and unlock advanced chapters, you can follow me on Patreon. Up to 20 chapters ahead for now. Patreon com, BlurryDream. BlurryDream creators' thoughts. 3 comments 0 vote. Chapter 40. The Dragonlord Blood Right. Just as the Golden Dragonlord was about to crash into the ground, it suddenly opened its massive jaws, unleashing a dazzling, terrifying blast of golden dragonfire. Shrouded in the searing breath, the Golden Dragonlord dove straight at Tiamat. Though it had lost all reason, its instincts as the champion Dragonlord remained. This wasn't a mindless suicide charge, it had no intention of turning itself into a living bomb. Almost simultaneously, Tiamat raised her enormous head and unleashed her own breath, a blazing torrent of crimson flames, as molten and fearsome as lava, aimed straight at the descending golden dragon. Boom! In an instant, golden and crimson flames collided violently, like 2 meteors crashing head-on. A thunderous explosion erupted, so loud and forceful it seemed to shake the very heavens and earth. Just as the Golden Dragonlord began to climb again, hoping to use Tiamat as an easy target pinned to the ground, something massive lunged through the thick smoke and blazing light of the explosion. A gaping dragon maw, wide as a chasm, dozens of meters across, snapped toward it with blinding speed. Tiamat had braced herself on her broken hind legs, paying no heed to her injuries, using every ounce of strength to hurl herself into the heart of the dragonfire. From the ground, the onlookers could clearly see it. Under the immense strain, broken bones jutted out from beneath her tough scales, fresh blood seeping through the cracks. But she charged on like a beast possessed, completely ignoring the pain as she barreled toward the Golden Dragonlord. A terrifying creature, one not only ruthless to her enemies, but utterly merciless to her own body, as if it didn't even belong to her. With the explosion smoke and fire serving as a perfect screen, Tiamat's bite made it through. Among the crowd, many renowned artists from across the world had gathered to witness the legendary battle. Now, every one of them was furiously sketching, trying to capture the grandeur of what they saw, this once-in-a-lifetime moment. A dragonlord weighing thousands of tons, like a towering mountain, launching a brutal leap from the ground, striking at a golden dragon radiating its own terrifying aura. They all knew, if they could perfectly render even a fraction of what they saw, it would secure their place in the world of art forever. In the Golden Dragonlord's view, that colossal abyss-like maw was closing in fast, aimed right at the vital artery in its throat. Fortunately, those battle-hardened instincts kicked in again at the last possible second, sparing its life. Abandoning its upward climb, the Golden Dragonlord jerked its thick neck to the side just in time, narrowly avoiding a fatal strike. Crunch. Tear. A chilling, skin-crawling sound echoed through the air as Tiamat's massive jaws clamped down on one of the Golden Dragonlord's fleshy wings. Then, in mid-air, she wrenched her head violently. With the momentum of the Golden Dragon's own flight combined with Tiamat's brute force, the massive wing, hundreds of meters wide, was ripped clean off. Dragon blood exploded like a fountain, spraying high into the sky, turning the air a blinding shade of red. For the Golden Dragonlord, the torn limb was agonizing, but the real danger was the uncontrollable plunge toward the earth. The very dive it had used to attack was now an inescapable death spiral. Boom. Its head slammed into the vast grassland like a plow, carving a deep trench hundreds of meters long before the force of its fall finally came to a halt. Thud. Tiamat also came crashing down from above, slamming heavily into the ground. She held the severed wing between her jaws, tilted her head back, and began chewing. Flesh, skin, and bone, all swallowed down with a crunch. She looked completely unbothered, radiating a brutal kind of triumph. The outcome was now unmistakably clear. The knight who had ridden the Golden Dragon was dead. The Golden Dragonlord, gravely wounded, lay motionless, completely defeated. At that moment, Elder Pan's figure slowly reappeared in the sky. He raised one hand, just about to declare the final result. But as he opened his mouth, the words froze on his lips. Not a single sound escaped. He stared downward in stunned silence, eyes wide with something close to disbelief, fixated on Tiamat, the mother of dragons, and what she had just done. On the ground, cries of alarm rippled through the crowd. What is the mother of evil dragons trying to do? They watched in stunned disbelief as Tiamat dragged her battered, nearly crippled body across the grasslands, struggling to crawl toward the Golden Dragonlord. The Golden Dragon's massive head was buried deep in the soil, its rear end sticking up comically into the air. Before long, Tiamat reached the Golden Dragon's side. Without hesitation, she opened her gaping, terrifying maw. Her eyes gleamed with savage light as she lunged forward and clamped her jaws down, hard, on the Golden Dragonlord's exposed hindquarters. Cirque. With a sickening tear, a chunk of flesh weighing over 1,000 pounds was ripped clean from the dragon's rear. The Golden Dragonlord let out a shrill, piercing scream that echoed across the plains, mournful, harrowing. But with no strength left, the dragon could do nothing but lie helplessly in the dirt, wailing in pain. Tiamat paid no mind. She raised her head and let out a triumphant roar to the skies, as if proclaiming her victory to the world. Then, she resumed her horrifying feast, tearing bloody chunks from her foe one bite at a time, devouring them with savage glee. On the viewing platform, council members and heads of houses looked on in disbelief, murmuring among themselves. By the ancestors, the mother of dragons is devouring the Golden Dragonlord alive, in front of everyone. This is madness. What kind of cruelty is this? The head of House Edarian was pale with shock, his voice trembling uncontrollably. Even if she had to eat her opponent, she should have ended its life first. This is just too gruesome, too savage, it's beyond comprehension, muttered the head of House Aurelian, drawing in a sharp breath, unease written all over his face. Another house leader could only sigh. She truly lives up to the name, Evil Dragon. I've never seen anything like this. Out on the grasslands, the spectators were no less stunned by Tiamat's grotesque display. But what was truly unexpected was their reaction. Instead of recoiling in horror or condemning her, the people erupted in frenzied cheers. Their faces lit up with fanaticism as they shouted words of praise and devotion toward Tiamat. The crowd was nearly hysterical with excitement. The Valyrian Freehold had always been a brutal slave state. The Valyrians were never champions of freedom or democracy, on the contrary. Despite its name, the Freehold worshipped power, reveled in violence, and operated by a code of morality uniquely their own. At that moment, Aegon finally landed on the grass. He stood still, silently watching as his dragon, Tiamat, tore flesh from her vanquished opponent and devoured it without mercy. In his heart, he thought, "You truly are something else, Tiamat, the very embodiment of brutality." He stood alone at the center of the field, sweeping his gaze over the thousands gathered around the dueling grounds. Everywhere he looked, people were screaming Tiamat's name in wild adoration, their worship resembling the mindless obsession of fans chasing pop idols in another life. Ding! You have won the champion dragon battle in the Valyrian Freehold. You slew an epic-level dragon in battle and achieved an epic achievement. Reward: 1 purple tire lottery chance. Guaranteed reward: purple tire item. Aegon ignored the system prompt ringing in his ears. He was too stunned by the intensity of the moment. Is this what Valyria truly is? Each time Tiamat tore another strip of raw, bleeding flesh from the Golden Dragonlord, the crowd roared even louder. Their shouts rose in waves, shaking the very air. Dragonlord blood sacrifice. Dragonlord blood sacrifice. The chant swelled into a deafening wall of sound, echoing across the grasslands. People gathered around Tiamat in a wide circle and broke into frenzied dance, performing a traditional rite to honor the ancestral spirits. To them, Tiamat's brutal act of devouring the Golden Dragonlord alive had transformed into something sacred, a blood offering, a divine ritual. The sheer fanaticism in the air was suffocating. High above, Pan stared down at the scene unfolding below, the madness, the celebration, the spiraling chaos. His eyes held only sadness and quiet despair. His lips trembled as he murmured to himself. Back then, should I really have led them to the 14 flames? Did I truly make the right choice? Could it be that I doomed them all? But this mistake will soon be corrected. He shook his head slowly. His once solid figure began to blur, then shattered into fragments of glowing crimson, dispersing like wisps of smoke before drifting back to the viewing platform. As Pan reappeared, the council members and heads of houses immediately gathered around him. The head of House Elanus spoke first, clearly agitated. Now that the defeated Dragonlord is dead, doesn't that mean our grand plan has lost another dragon pillar? Pan half closed his time-worn, clouded eyes. His voice remained calm, unhurried. It doesn't matter. Whether Aegon won or lost this match, he was always destined to become part of the grand plan. Some of the council members exchanged knowing looks, they clearly weren't surprised, having heard whispers of this before. Others, however, were visibly confused, unsure what it all meant. At that moment, the head of House Edarian, who knew some of the inside story, respectfully turned to Elder Pan and asked, "All this time, we've never interfered in your dealings with Aegon. But now, Elder, isn't it time you shared the full truth with us?" If Aegon won this duel, he had a few conditions. As long as we meet them, he agreed to join Bloodsource Peak, Pan replied calmly as he slowly turned and walked to the edge of the viewing platform, his gaze falling on Tiamat as she continued feasting on the golden dragon. Seeing this, the other heads of houses followed Pan to the platform's edge. "What are Aegon's terms, exactly?" asked the head of House Elanus. He asked for the full inheritance of blood mage arts, the forging method of Valyrian steel, and the sorcery used to synthesize dragon flesh and blood, Pan said without expression. His voice was steady, smooth as still water, but the weight of his words struck every listener like a bolt of lightning. "Impossible. That man is too greedy." The head of House Elanus burst out, face contorted in anger. "These are the cornerstones of the Freehold civilization. How could we just hand them over?" The head of House Edarian quickly added in protest. "That would be tantamount to naming him a counselor. His appetite's bigger than his dragon." Another house leader grumbled. Pan raised a hand slightly, gesturing for calm. Then he spoke slowly, "He won't leave Bloodsource Peak with those legacies. He will ascend alongside the other dragon pillars participating in the grand plan." Immortality was one of the terms he agreed to. The councillors and house leaders fell into heavy silence. Every face was grim, each one silently weighing the cost. Just as they were deep in thought, the head of House Elanus suddenly pointed to the grasslands, his face filled with shock. His hand trembled uncontrollably as he stammered, the mother of evil dragons. She's standing up. She actually healed her wounds in just a few moments." "What? That's not possible." All heads turned toward Tiamat. To their disbelief, she truly was standing. The shattered bones that had once pierced through her body were still lodged in her flesh, but now, her powerful regeneration had forced them deeper into the muscle, forming jagged, protruding bone spines. Grotesque, eerie, yet terrifyingly majestic. Roar. A thunderous bellow, like the return of a king, echoed across the land. The mighty soundwave blasted toward the viewing platform atop Ancestral Spirit Peak, shaking the ears and hearts of all who heard it. The house leaders stood frozen, staring at Tiamat in stunned silence. This kind of regeneration. It's the perfect counter to that monster in the Earth's core. Aegon's dragon is truly extraordinary. "I finally understand your intention, Elder," the head of House Aurelian murmured. Then he turned and bowed deeply to Pan, his face full of guilt. "I sincerely apologize for my earlier foolishness. Please forgive my rudeness." Pan said nothing in response. His eyes remained fixed on Tiamat. The mother of evil dragons is undeniably gifted. She's an irreplaceable dragon pillar for our grand plan. We'll let this go, but he must swear a curse. The blood mage legacy is to be practiced by him alone. It must never be passed on, the head of House Edarian said solemnly. Pan gave a slight nod of agreement, said nothing more, and then faded from the viewing platform, as if he had never been there at all. Down on the plains, the crowd erupted in frenzied cheers at the sight of Tiamat standing once more. They believed with fervent joy that their ritual dance and Dragonlord blood sacrifice had pleased the ancestral spirits, who in turn had granted the mother of evil dragons divine protection and rebirth. Everyone could see it. Tiamat's body was visibly larger than before. To them, it was clearly a blessing from the spirits. Amid the roar of celebration, Tiamat slowly made her way toward her rider, Aegon. She gently lowered her massive head, carefully bowing it to the ground in a gesture for Aegon to climb aboard. Aegon reached up and grasped one of the horned ridges atop her head. Using both hands and feet, he climbed her massive skull. Once he stood steadily between the crown-like array of horns, he gripped one thick horn for balance. With a clear and powerful cry, Tiamat began to sprint. Her vast wings spread wide and beat against the air. Amid the rushing wind, she lifted off, soaring into the sky and leaving the Valyrian plains behind. The people below fell to one knee of their own accord, eyes full of reverence and reluctant awe, as if bidding farewell to a true king, to the hero of their hearts. As Tiamat rose into the sky, the noise of the crowd faded beneath them. Aegon sat quietly atop her head, calmly surveying the city of Valyria below, before turning his gaze northward, toward the distant peaks of the 14 Flames. And then, on Tiamat's back, Pan's crimson form slowly began to coalesce once again. Aegon showed no surprise. By now, he was used to the Elder's ghost-like appearances. It was as if, anywhere near Valyria, Pan could appear and disappear at will. Truly, Pan was the most powerful human in the entire Freehold. Or maybe he's not human at all. Could a human really wield such power? Aegon wondered silently. You're lost, Pan said softly from behind him. Aegon kept his gaze forward, saying nothing. Pan paused, then stepped forward and sat cross-legged near Tiamat's brow. His voice was calm as he said, "You've always wanted to know what the grand plan really is. Now, I'll show you. If you'd like to support my work and unlock advanced chapters, you can follow me on Patreon. Up to 20 chapters ahead for now. Patreon com, BlurryDream. BlurryDream creators' thoughts. 5 comments 0 vote. Chapter 41, A Song of Ice and Fire. Where are we going? Aegon walked over and sat next to Pan, seemingly by chance, but in truth, he was already considering using his chip to scan Pan's true form. However, the moment he sat down, Aegon realized he couldn't touch Pan at all. It was like sitting beside a phantom. Up, Pan said calmly. Aegon immediately gave the order to Tiamat. With a powerful roar, she carried them higher into the sky. In no time, the air grew thin, so thin that if not for the warmth radiating from Tiamat's body, Aegon might have started to shiver from the cold. Is this high enough? Aegon asked, turning his head. Pan gave a slight nod and raised his hand, pointing downward. Following the direction of his finger, Aegon looked down and saw the full outline of the Valyrian Peninsula. It resembled a sleeping dragon, its winding body stretching out, with its tail connected to the continent of Essos. Where's the grand plan? Aegon asked, tired of Pan's riddles. Right beneath us. Pan turned to Aegon and slowly traced a circle in the air with his index finger. Aegon looked down toward the continental shelf, following Pan's motion. After some searching, he finally noticed something, a massive circular ring, several thousand square kilometers wide, encircling the entire Valyrian Peninsula. Its precise shape could only be man-made. Some parts of the ring were still submerged beneath the sea, but if the entire structure were connected, it would resemble a giant totem covering the whole peninsula. This is a magic array. A magic array that spans part of the continental shelf. Aegon muttered in shock. It's called the True Dragon Origin Refining Array. The blood mages spent thousands of years developing it. It can extract the dragon blood from every true dragon bloodline within its bounds. The price is a massive explosion, Pan said, expressionless. The price is also hundreds of millions of lives. Aegon said, lips trembling. In the pursuit of immortality, such sacrifices are inevitable. You're fortunate, Aegon. You have the chance to become a dragonlord, to join the heart of the grand plan, and to stand at the center of the altar atop the 14 Flames, without undergoing dragonblood refinement. Pan's tone remained indifferent, as though the fate of countless lives meant nothing to him. A chill spread through Aegon. What if it fails? The Targaryens are the final fire I released from the island. One day, they'll return to the Valyrian Peninsula, inherit the legacy of Bloodsource Peak, and restore the glory of the Valyrians, Pan replied coldly. Aegon let out a long breath, trying to calm the storm inside him. How long until the grand plan begins? If Tiamat, the dragon pillar, returns to her place, it will only take 10 years to activate. Pan gently patted Aegon on the shoulder. One day, you'll understand the greatness of the blood mages. This is our mission. I hope, when that time comes, you'll shoulder your duty and not disappoint me. Also, bring Tiamat to Bloodsource Peak as soon as possible. I can feel her life force fading. Only the demigod at the center of the earth can extend it. I understand, Elder, Aegon replied. As soon as he spoke, Pan vanished into the air. Aegon stared at the vast circular trench below for a long time, then sighed and signaled Tiamat to descend, heading toward the dragon pit of House Targaryen. After settling Tiamat, Aegon reunited with his family in the Great Hall of the main keep, where they had already returned. Where did you go? Daenerys asked, her tone full of concern. Aegon gently wrapped an arm around her waist and replied calmly, the elder came to me. He explained the purpose of the grand plan. Stop right there, Aegon. Don't speak of secrets like that. If anyone overhears, none of us will leave the Valyrian Peninsula alive, Aenar quickly interrupted. Even after Aegon nodded slightly, Aenar still patted his chest uneasily. You can't leave? Aenar asked. Yes. I made a deal with the elder. I have to stay, Aegon replied. And the Targaryens? Aenar pressed. The Targaryens can leave safely. But the master blacksmiths of Valyrian steel must be sent back, Aegon answered. Hearing that, Aenar let out a long breath of relief. If you're not going, then I'm not going, Daenerys said, her eyes red. Aegon smiled slightly. We still have 10 years. There's no hurry. If you're not in a rush to leave, you can stay with me a while longer. Daenerys hugged Aegon tightly. I'm not leaving either, Daenerys said as she followed and embraced Aegon as well. You haven't even asked me to stay, so I'm not going anywhere, Ilya chimed in, stepping closer. Aegon gently stroked Ilya's long, gray-blue hair, thinking to himself how even this little one could be stubborn at times. Aenar and his wife exchanged a look and quietly exited the hall, leaving the space to Aegon and his wives. Looking at the women in his arms, Aegon smiled. Since you're willing to stay with me a little longer, I'll be with you until you give birth. The grand plan for Bloodsource Peak can wait 6 months. HMPH. Daenerys gave him a tender, affectionate look. Aegon's hands began gently caressing his wives, and before long, soft, suggestive sounds echoed through the hall. Back to the bedroom, you rascal, Daenerys murmured. Both wives were pregnant, so Aegon wasn't about to trouble them, he was merely using his hands to help ease their discomfort. Time passed slowly. 2 weeks later. In Targaryen Bay, the tide had risen again. All the ships of House Targaryen gathered at the shore, while slaves busily loaded cargo onto them. Aegon arrived with his wives to see off his father, Aenar. With the approval of the Dragonlord Council, House Targaryen was allowed to migrate safely, and all the family's remaining wealth was loaded onto the fleet. On the beach, Aenar embraced Aegon tightly as they exchanged parting words. When Daenerys gives birth, I'll notify Dragonstone immediately. I hope you and Valyrian can come pick them up, Aegon said softly. All right. Aenar patted Aegon's back and added, don't worry. Your child with Daenerys will inherit your title as heir of the house. The family will never forget your sacrifice. After letting go, Aenar went on to hug Daenerys and Daenerys, his biological daughters. Goodbye, my daughters, he said, kissing Daenerys on the forehead. Tears welled up in Daenerys' eyes. Goodbye. After the nobles of House Valerys and House Celtigar had finished saying their farewells to the Targaryens, they stepped forward and placed a hand to their chests, bowing respectfully to Aegon. Prince Aegon, we will always remember your sacrifice, said the head of House Valerys sincerely. Prince Aegon, take care. Aegon gave them a slight nod and said nothing more. With Aegon's family watching from the shore, Aenar led the fleet away from the bay. The core members of House Targaryen, including Aenar, waved to Aegon in farewell. Aegon and his 3 wives climbed a high hill near the bay. From here, the view was clear, they could see the fleet slowly heading west, deeper into the summer sea. Tiamat and Dreamshade lay on the cliff's edge, roaring loudly after Valyrian. Valyrian turned his head and gave a responding roar to Tiamat, then continued flying alongside the ships, growing smaller and smaller in the distance. At sea, aboard the flagship of House Targaryen, Aenar stood at the stern, gazing wistfully at his homeland. Even someone like Aenar, known for his unshakable toughness, couldn't stop the tightness rising in his throat. This was the land where his family had taken root for thousands of years, and now, they had to abandon it. As he was lost in the sorrow of parting, blood-red snowflakes suddenly began drifting around the stern, and a figure slowly took form. The moment Aenar saw it, his expression turned solemn. He placed a hand over his chest and bowed deeply. Elder, do you have any final instructions for House Targaryen? Pan's blood-red robe fluttered in the sea breeze, like a dancer suspended in the air. He drew a dragonbone dagger from his waist and leaned forward, offering it to Aenar. Aenar's heart jolted. The elder was handing him the ancestral sacrificial blade of the Valyrians. He was only a minor dragonlord, why would he be entrusted with such a sacred relic? But a gift from the elder could not be refused. Without a second thought, he dropped to one knee and raised both hands above his head. From my blood, a prince or princess of destiny shall be born, and their will shall forge. The elder's ethereal voice drifted as if from a faraway shore. Pan began chanting an ancient verse, but before he could finish, his form dissolved once again into a swirl of sorrowful snowflakes, scattering on the sea wind. Lowering his head, Aenar suddenly felt a weight fall into his upraised hands. A dagger now lay in his palms, and its razor-sharp Valyrian steel edge had cut through his skin. He flinched from the pain and instinctively pulled back his hand, only to see the elder had already vanished. On the dragonbone dagger, now stained with his blood, the verse Pan had begun chanting slowly emerged, glowing with a faint red light. Staring at the blood-colored inscription, Aenar couldn't stop himself from softly speaking the 5 words the elder had left unspoken. A song of ice and fire. If you'd like to support my work and unlock advanced chapters, you can follow me on Patreon. Up to 20 chapters ahead for now. Patreon comp BlurryDream. BlurryDream creators' thoughts. 4 comments 0 vote. Chapter 42. Bloodsource Peak. Under the gaze of Aegon's family, the Targaryen fleet gradually shrank into the distance, finally disappearing beyond the horizon in the golden afterglow of sunset. Daenys and Daenerys nestled against him on either side, while Ilya held tightly to his waist. Everyone silently watched the vast sea. It wasn't until the sun was about to sink below the waves that they turned back, urged gently by Aegon. The Targaryen main castle was the only remaining property of House Targaryen yet to be sold. Now, only a few servants remained inside, making the ancient stronghold feel especially empty and desolate. The butler Farlan, unwilling to leave his homeland, had chosen not to follow Aenar. Aware of the prophecy of destruction, he had resolutely decided to remain and share the fate of the 1,000-year-old castle. That night, after comforting his wives to sleep, Aegon opened his attribute panel. During the recent champion dragon battle, he had successfully slain a dragonlord, earning an epic achievement, though he hadn't yet claimed his reward. Now that things had settled, he tapped the draw button. You have 1 purple tire draw available. A purple item is guaranteed. Proceed with the draw. Yes. Congratulations, you have obtained a dark purple item, Emerald Dream. Dark purple is considered the top tier within the purple grade. Not the best result, but not the worst either, Aegon thought to himself, then focused his mind to inspect the item's details. Item: Emerald Dream. Type: Solidification Domain. Quality: Dark Purple. Rating: 259. Function: allows you to create a personal domain within the void, up to the size of a village or town. You can send family members into this space to clear all negative conditions and transform them into spirits. Note: let weary souls find a place to rest. Emerald Dream seemed like a perfect sanctuary for his wives and the elders of his house. Once he completed his main quest and ascended to godhood, perhaps he could find a way to bring them back. With that thought, Aegon closed the panel, held his wives close, and drifted into deep sleep. After the Targaryen fleet departed, Aegon's 2 wives were only about 6 months from giving birth. He didn't rush to Bloodsource Peak to study blood sorcery, instead choosing to remain at Targaryen to care for them. During this time, messages from the Dragonblood guards at Bloodsource Peak came one after another, urging him to send Tiamat over as soon as possible. But each time, Aegon calmly suppressed the requests. In the blink of an eye, 6 months passed. As Daenys approached labor, Aegon sent word to Aenar, who was busy with large-scale construction on Dragonstone, to come welcome the newborn. A week later, Daenys gave birth to a baby boy. Aegon named his firstborn son Rhaegar. With this, Aegon's millennia-long main quest officially entered its countdown phase. A new option appeared on his attribute panel, allowing him to view information related to his house. Aenar arrived a few days later, riding Valyrian in haste. The reunion between Aenar and Daenys was filled with joy, and Aenar updated Aegon on the developments of the house on Dragonstone. Dragonstone, the westernmost outpost of Valyria, spanned the gullet and firmly controlled the vital maritime passage into Blackwater Bay. House Velaryon, House Targaryen's most powerful vassal, had been granted driftmark. They used migrating merchant ships to establish a small navy responsible for collecting tolls from passing travelers and merchants on behalf of House Targaryen. Another vassal, House Celtigar, had been granted Claw Isle. With the assistance of Targaryen aerial dragons, they controlled the central waters of the Narrow Sea. In this way, House Targaryen had successfully established a foothold near the continent of Westeros. They now possessed their own territory and a stable source of economic influence. Aenar also mentioned to Aegon that before leaving the peninsula, Pan had gifted him a dragonbone dagger. He had discussed the prophecy carved into the blade with Daenys, but they couldn't decipher it. The prophecy was too vague to be of any use in the current situation. Aenar planned to stay for a month, after which he would take Aegon's son Rhaegar back to Dragonstone. With so many matters awaiting attention in the newly established territory, it was only thanks to Daenys' earnest pleading that Aenar agreed to stay that long. Half a month later, Aegon's eldest daughter was born, Daenerys gave birth to a baby girl. Aegon named her Alaina and decided she would be sent to Dragonstone with Aenar at the end of the month. The warm days of family reunion passed quickly. At the end of the month, Aenar prepared to leave on Valyrian. Daenerys and Daenerys, unable to bear the pain of parting, chose not to see them off. As he left the Valyrian Peninsula, Aenar looked back at the land shaped like a coiled dragon, hoping Elder Pan would appear once more and offer clarity about the dagger's prophecy. But despite his repeated glances, Pan never showed. In the end, Aenar could only turn toward the western reaches of the Summer Sea and fly on. Back at the Targaryen main castle, Aegon consoled his wives. For any mother, being separated from her own child was unbearably cruel. After spending a few days with them at home, Aegon made his way to Tiamat's dragon pit. Tiamat's massive body, over 300 meters long, lay curled in the nest like a mountain. She had already entered the twilight of her life. In just half a year, Tiamat had rapidly declined from a dragon in her prime to one on the verge of death. Even with Aegon at her side, Tiamat merely opened her eyes slightly. There were no affectionate gestures. She was simply too old. Even the smallest movement seemed to drain her strength. Aegon walked up beside her massive body, gently running his hand over the wrinkled skin of the great dragon. The marks of time were etched deeply into what had once been an AWE-inspiring frame. Her bony armor plates had long lost their sheen, and the scales that once gleamed like obsidian now appeared mottled and dull in color. It felt like the cycle of life itself, his newborn son and daughter heralding a new beginning, even as Tiamat neared her end. Tiamat half-closed her golden eyes, quietly enjoying her master's touch. At last, she slowly raised her head and gave Aegon a soft nudge. Once fearsome and majestic, she now moved with the weary sluggishness of old age. Her massive dark gold eyes had turned cloudy, no longer burning with the sharp, fiery light of her youth. Old girl. Aegon murmured, gently pressing a kiss to Tiamat's snout, his forehead resting against her dragon teeth. He whispered, let's fly once more, toward rebirth. Roar. Tiamat sensed her master's intent and let out a deep, powerful cry. Then, slowly, she began to move, unfolding her towering form. The dragonkeepers in the dragon pit were startled by the noise and rushed over to see what was happening. Since the champion dragon battle, the mother of dragons had not left the pit once, yet today, she suddenly roared. Aegon stood firmly atop Tiamat's head, one hand gripping the tip of her horned crown as he shouted, fly, Tiamat. Roar. Tiamat roared in response and began to move her massive, heavy body. Her thick legs, as strong as stone pillars, slowly lifted her weight, each step causing the ground to quake slightly. At first, her movements were clumsy, like an old warrior trying to rouse stiffened limbs after years of rest. But as she continued forward, her pace began to pick up, her stride growing stronger and steadier. She charged forward faster and faster, her colossal form like an unstoppable landborne warship rumbling across the earth. Her vast wings unfurled, darkening the sky, and with a mighty beat, she stirred up a roaring wind. Slowly, she lifted off from the ground, soaring northward toward the 14 flames. As Tiamat flew low over Valyria, the people in the city looked up. The figure atop the dragon's head was unmistakable, Aegon, the champion dragonlord, the dragon rider who had fought that legendary battle. At the sight of him, the citizens instinctively bowed their heads in quiet reverence. After all, the Dragonlord War had only been half a year ago. That dazzling battle had captured the hearts of an entire generation, and Aegon had since become a household name, an idol to countless Valyrians. After passing the gates of Freehold, Aegon looked down to see the familiar network of canyons below. It brought back vivid memories. More than a year ago, he and Daenerys had flown this same route to attend the dragon taming tournament. As they flew deeper into the 14 flames, Aegon spotted a number of man-made trenches, marking the core runes of the bloodline land array. Bloodsource Peak was close now. 2 Dragonblood guards, already alerted to Aegon and Tiamat's arrival, waited ahead to greet them. Each rode a fully grown dragon more than 20 meters long. They flew up alongside Tiamat like small escort ships flanking a skyborne mothership, guiding her forward. Passing peak after peak, Tiamat was led to a massive abyss several kilometers wide. Towering cliffs surrounded the chasm on all sides, dropping straight into unseen depths like a gaping wound into endless darkness. This is Bloodsource Peak. Aegon called out to the Dragonblood guard flying beside him. She nodded, then shouted back, Bloodsource Peak is an inverted mountain, it lies beneath this abyss. From her voice, Aegon realized the Dragonblood guard was a woman. As she led the way downward, Aegon urged Tiamat to follow closely behind. As they descended, Aegon was surprised to see trees and lush vegetation clinging stubbornly to the steep cliff walls. Ferns in particular grew in abundance, and they were enormous, far larger than ordinary plants, as though thriving in some oversized, alien ecosystem. The deeper they went, the dimmer the light became, until at last, all natural light vanished completely. Only the faint blue glow emitted by the ferns flickered in the darkness, like scattered, mysterious stars. The air was thick with the sweet, heady fragrance of flowers, casting a serene and otherworldly stillness over everything. A moment later, they descended above a circular city built into the depths of the abyss. Along the cliff walls, countless suspended pavilions had been constructed, connected by stairways. Dozens of humans in gray robes moved busily between them. However, the two Dragonblood guards did not stop there and continued leading Aegon deeper downward. Eventually, Aegon caught sight of a vast steel platform at the bottom of the abyss. The surface was engraved with countless intricate runes, and atop it lay 15 enormous shackles, each over 100 meters in length. Of these, 14 shackles on the outer ring each held a King-Tie dragon, bound tightly by massive chains. Strangely, none of the dragons reacted to Tiamat's arrival. Their eyes remained shut as if they were locked in a deep, unshakable slumber. The steel restraints were rusted with age. It was clear these dragons had been imprisoned here for a very long time. At the very center stood a massive, newly forged shackle, completely empty. Aegon understood instantly. This spot had been prepared for Tiamat. No wonder the councillor houses feared Tiamat so much. Their own dragonlords must have all been spent here, Aegon thought to himself. Just then, Pan's figure slowly materialized in midair. You've finally arrived. Let Tiamat land in the center. The steel needle tubes on the shackles are linked to the immortal divinity of a demigod. It can restore Tiamat's lifespan. Aegon gave a small nod, then guided Tiamat to descend gently onto the central ritual platform. With a deep, resonant thud, Tiamat touched down firmly. Several Dragonblood guards hurried forward to fasten the restraints. As the hollow steel spikes pierced the soft flesh between the seams of Tiamat's bone-plated armor, she let out a roar of fury. With a sudden snap, she lunged at a nearby adult dragon that failed to evade in time, biting it clean in half in a single strike. The unfortunate dragon didn't even have time to cry out before it was dead. Tiamat swallowed the carcass whole. The surrounding Dragonblood guards, stunned and terrified, quickly scattered to a safer distance. Pan simply shook his head and raised his hand, flicking his fingers toward the shackles. The massive iron restraints, each weighing tens of thousands of pounds, rose effortlessly into the air, then slammed down, locking around Tiamat's limbs and neck. Once the restraints were secured, a translucent tube connected to the platform began to pulse. From within, a stream of violet liquid was slowly drawn out and channeled into Tiamat's body. Aegon immediately tuned into Tiamat's mental state. As the purple fluid entered her, he sensed a wave of elation, an intense, euphoric stimulation, not unlike the effects of blood orchid. Her golden eyes, which had still been open, gradually closed. She was on the verge of falling into sleep. He opened Tiamat's attribute panel. Her talent S, life code was visibly dimming, the minus sign in front was slowly becoming translucent. Through their mental link, he could feel that her life force was also gradually returning. What is that purple liquid? Aegon asked, his voice filled with curiosity. Pan remained calm as he answered, it's the divinity of a demigod. The very first dragons were created using it. If a human can withstand the backlash of divinity, even a single drop is enough to transform their true dragonblood into the bloodline of a dragonlord. If you'd like to support my work and unlock advanced chapters, you can follow me on Patreon. Up to 20 chapters ahead for now. P. Atrian BlurryDream. New translation. Elden Lord of Cinders. BlurryDream creators' thoughts. 3 comments 0 vote. Chapter 43. The First Blood Mage. Tiamat's wrinkled dragon hide gradually began to smooth out, its bones creaking like an ancient mechanism being restored and recalibrated after countless years. Its dragon eyes slowly closed as it curled up like a drowsy infant, slipping into slumber. Aegon rolled over and climbed down from the dragon saddle mounted on the horned crown of its head. The floor beneath his feet was made of an extremely hard metal, radiating waves of scorching heat. The demigod monster is right beneath us? Aegon asked, stamping his foot on instinct. Pan nodded slightly, his expression grave. It is the origin of everything, and the very core of this ascension plan. When all the true dragon bloodlines of the Valyrian Peninsula gather here, the Kingtier dragons will first purge the beastly nature from the divine blood. Then, using human dragon blood, the divine aspects of that blood will be neutralized. In this way, only the immortal essence of the divine blood remains, making it possible for you to absorb it. Aegon picked up on the elder's wording and asked in confusion, "Us? Aren't you ascending with the council members?" Pan let out a sigh, his eyes filled with fatigue and ancient weariness. "I've endured for thousands of years. My own source has long been depleted. No amount of godliness would make a difference for me now." As soon as he finished speaking, Pan's figure dissolved like drifting smoke into countless fragments, gradually vanishing from sight. A white dragon descended from the sky, ridden by the female dragon knight who had earlier led Aegon. "Prince Aegon, please come with me. The council members have prepared a banquet in your honor." Up in the floating city above, the female knight said, still seated on the dragon's back, extending a hand toward him in invitation. Aegon nodded slightly, then climbed up onto the white dragon using both hands and feet, settling in behind the knight. The white dragon beat its wings and soared upward, flying straight back toward the floating pavilion they had encountered on their descent. At the entrance of a protruding cave, Aegon and the female knight dismounted. They followed a rope-woven suspension ladder for a short distance until Aegon was led to a stone tower. Half of the structure was embedded into the cave wall, making it appear as though it had grown directly out of the rock itself. Aegon reached out and pushed open the heavy bronze doors of the banquet hall. The murmur of conversation spilled out immediately from within. Inside, everyone wore the resplendent robes of the Dragonlord Council, adorned in gold and silver trim that clearly marked their status. The walls around them were built from black obsidian, gleaming with an eerie, mysterious sheen under the light of the blazing torches. As soon as Aegon stepped into the hall, he was overwhelmed by an intense atmosphere of decadence, causing him to frown slightly. At the very center of the banquet was a grotesque display, a feast of female bodies. Exquisitely prepared dishes made from rare and exotic ingredients were laid out across finely crafted long tables. The plates, holding these delicacies were the bodies of graceful, alluring women. Some lay in languid poses, clothed in nothing but a few wisps of sheer fabric. Their snow-white skin and sensual curves were exposed without the slightest restraint, offered openly to the eyes of those present. Their faces bore expressions of flattery and submissiveness. Reduced to mere instruments for visual and physical indulgence, they showed no shame, only eagerness to use their flesh to please and satisfy the council members' twisted, insatiable gazes. "Welcome, Aegon," the head of House Targaryen called out with a hearty laugh, striding over with 2 goblets filled with blood-red wine in hand. Aegon reached out and took the offered goblet, then clinked it lightly against the other. Cheers. Clink. With a crisp sound, the 2 glasses collided, and both men downed their drinks in one go. Seeing Aegon's cooperative attitude, the expressions of the dozen or so council members who had been watching him intently began to ease slightly. What followed was the usual round of pleasantries and introductions. Aegon exchanged brief greetings with each of the council members, among them even the head of House Aurelian, who had once opposed House Targaryen. But faced with the shared goal of the grand plan, the two seemed to understand each other without the need for words, silently agreeing to let the past grudges remain buried. Once Aegon had become somewhat acquainted with the others. Pan's figure appeared at just that moment in the banquet hall. The elder raised both hands gently, and only after the hall gradually quieted down did he begin to speak. "Since Aegon has now joined the Dragon Pillar, we'll start the Dragonlord Council ahead of schedule today, and take this opportunity to show him the progress of the grand plan." Aegon noticed everyone's eyes turn to him. He responded with a slight smile, giving a polite nod to the room as he raised his cup. Pan slowly descended to the floor, then turned and walked toward an iron door at the back of the banquet hall. Seeing this, the head of House Targaryen lightly patted Aegon on the shoulder, signaling for him to follow. Aegon obeyed and followed them. After passing through the iron door, he was met with a vast cavern even more expansive than the banquet hall. Countless opulent magical crystal chandeliers hung overhead, illuminating the entire space in brilliant light. The cavern was so massive and empty that no matter how far Aegon looked, he couldn't see its outer edges. Everywhere the light reached, enormous transparent crystal vessels stood in orderly rows. These cylindrical vessels were sealed tightly at both ends with metal caps. From each one, thick metal tubes extended upward, connecting to the black stone ceiling above. Each vessel was filled with a thick yellow liquid, and submerged within were dragon-like specimens of all shapes and forms, some with dragon heads and human bodies, others with human torsos and dragon claws, and even some with insect bodies and dragon heads. The variations were endless. Aegon couldn't help but widen his eyes, his gaze drifting nervously from one vessel to another, unnerved by the eerie presence of the preserved creatures. A part of him feared they might suddenly awaken and lunge at him from the fluid. Just then, the head of House Targaryen gave Aegon another pat on the shoulder, startling him. Shocking, isn't it? Targaryen said with a smile. Under the bright lights above, his grin took on an unsettling, almost chilling quality. Aegon merely gave a silent nod in response. These test subjects were all pioneers from the ancient era, Targaryen said, pointing toward a creature with a human body and fleshy wings. He spoke with a touch of melancholy. They were once ancient blood mages. These pioneers sacrificed their own lives and bodies in the process of cultivating synthetic true dragon blood. The group's footsteps echoed with a steady clatter, reverberating through the vast, hollow chamber. Aegon followed alongside the dozen council members, making their way deeper into the ancient exhibition hall. He began to notice that the deeper they went, the larger the vessels became. After walking for several minutes, even the smallest of the vessels stood over 10 meters tall. The largest one visible was a towering 50 meters, its top brushing against the cavern ceiling. Countless metal tubes crisscrossed its upper and lower ends, and the surface of the crystal vessel was covered in blurred, indistinct rune-like markings, symbols that looked to be some form of sorceress seal. What is this? Aegon suddenly froze in shock. His pupils shrank sharply as he locked eyes on a crystal vessel over 10 meters tall. Inside it stood a humanoid dragon creature, more than 3 meters high, and it was alive. Its bulging dragon eyes followed Aegon and the others intently, tracking their every move. This is the latest result of the grand plan, said the head of House Targaryen in a hushed voice. He stepped forward and wiped off the base of the vessel, revealing a line of high Valyrian text engraved into the surface. Synthetic type, House Aurelian Experiment No. 8,233,874, True Dragonblood Rank, Dragonborn, Immortality Compatibility, 76%, Estimated Lifespan, 243 years, Danger Level, Maximum. Aegon struggled to steady his racing heart. They're using their own kin for experiments, no wonder they were capable of extracting the bloodline from an entire house. The head of House Targaryen was grinning with fanatical glee. He licked his lips and said with a chuckle, "Isn't it a perfect lifeform, Aegon? This member of House Aurelian was created using only the true dragonblood extracted from 100 Valyrians. Even the dragon used to filter the beastliness in the divine blood was just a regular magic dragon. And yet, its lifespan has already reached over 200 years. Once the grand plan begins, countless Valyrians will offer their dragon blood to us. The dragon lords will then filter out the beastliness, refining it completely. When that time comes, the amount of immortal matter we'll be able to absorb will reach a terrifying level. Achieving demi-godhood won't be just some foolish fantasy anymore." Aegon opened his mouth, but all he managed to say was, "Impressive." They continued deeper inside, eventually passing through the vast hall and entering a circular metal chamber. The entire room was forged from solid metal. At the center stood 15 towering seats, made from the same alloy as the steel floor found at the deepest depths of the abyss. Each seat was twice the height of a man, entangled with countless translucent tubes, their hollow tips all angled inward. "Aegon, this is where you'll need to remain when the final ascension ritual takes place. Outside of this chamber, the rest of the Valyrian Peninsula will be torn to ashes by the source refining array." Pan turned around, his expression blank as he addressed Aegon in a cold, flat tone. "When the time comes, you must focus. Use your spiritual power to keep your dragon firmly under control. If the dragon collapses under the pressure of the beastliness in the divine blood, your body will follow, and you will die." This is precisely why Aegon was given a seat in the ascension ritual despite protocol. His dragon has already broken through the shackles of physical evolution. Its resilience surpasses that of all 14 of you dragonlords combined. With Tiamat sharing the burden, the success of this ascension plan is no longer in doubt. As he listened, Aegon couldn't help but wonder to himself, could the Valyrian ascension plan really succeed, because of me and Tiamat? If you'd like to support my work and unlock advanced chapters, you can follow me on Patreon. Up to 20 chapters ahead for now. Patreon.com, BlurryDream. BlurryDream creators' thoughts. 7 comments 0 vote. Chapter 44, Dany's in Wonderland. The counselors listened quietly as Pan issued his warning. Clearly, these were matters they already understood, Pan was simply reiterating them for Aegon, the newest member. Aegon gave Pan a slight nod to show he had taken it in. Pan went on, starting this year, we'll begin arranging for the high-ranking Valyrians who left to return to the Freehold. In 5 years, we'll recall the dragon tamers and dragons. Everything must be done to maximize the success rate of the grand plan. The council members nodded in agreement. Understood. No problem. This explanation answered another lingering question Aegon had about the original story. No wonder so few true dragons remained after the doom. The Freehold was now the dominant power in the world, and dozens of dragons and dragonriders were still out there. But it turned out the Dragonlord Council had already summoned them all back. Aegon, the bloodmage legacy you're seeking is in the Dragon Tower within the floating city. The female Dragonblood guard who brought you here earlier, she's a bloodmage herself. If you have any questions, feel free to ask her. Aegon inclined his head slightly. Understood. Does anyone else have anything to add? Pan asked, looking around. Seeing that no one spoke, Pan declared the meeting adjourned. Before leaving the metallic chamber, Aegon glanced back, casting a long look at the metal seat in the center that now belonged to him. He sighed inwardly. The next 10 years will be a crossroads of fate. Should I go along with them, or sabotage the plan when the time comes? Back in the exhibition cave, the reverse-jointed dragon creature still alive inside its vessel noticed the counselors preparing to leave. It, or rather, he, suddenly thrashed violently in the yellow liquid, claws scraping desperately against the glass walls. Its mouth opened, and a hoarse voice rasped out. Father, it hurts, father. The head of House Aurelian, walking just ahead of Aegon, came to a sudden halt, his body frozen in place. Aegon noticed his clenched fists trembling faintly. He turned his head, glancing between the dragon creature and the counselor, stunned. This man, he's actually the creature's father. That's brutal. The head of House Aurelian slowly raised his head, forcing a smile onto his face. Just a bastard. No need to trouble yourselves over it, my colleagues. Duriel, I never thought you had a soft side in you. Ha 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 ha. A touching fatherson moment, isn't it? Tisk, tisk. Aurelian chuckled and shook his head. The grand plan is already in its final stage. This test subject no longer has any value. Best to dispose of him. Every time I see him, I feel nothing but disgust. And just like that, the counselors laughed and joked as they walked out of the cave. Aegon followed silently behind them, his decision already made. Once back in the banquet hall, Aegon excused himself, claiming he needed to study the bloodmage legacy in the Dragon Tower, using it as a way to escape the grotesque and debauched human feast. Stepping out of the Blackstone Tower, Aegon let out a long, heavy breath. Everything he had seen and heard in that bloodmage research base weighed heavily on him. His worldview, shaped since childhood under the Red Banner, was being relentlessly challenged. But Aegon had a defiant fire in his heart. The more these counselors tried to lure him into depravity through this grand plan, the more determined he became to resist, and punish the wicked. This cruel pleasure, will end in cruelty. Prince Aegon, are you headed to the Dragon Tower? The white dragon tamer approached and bowed respectfully. Aegon gave a nod. This way, please. She gestured for him to follow. What should I call you? Aegon asked, trailing behind her. He couldn't help but notice the generous curve of her swaying hips, accentuated by her slender waist, a figure that naturally drew a man's eye. My name is Talasia. The Elder is both my godfather and mentor. If you ever have any questions about blood mages, you can come to me. I live in the White Dragon Spire within the floating city. She glanced back at Aegon with a smile. From this angle, he could see the soft white curves of her chest through her low-cut neckline. Any time? Aegon asked with a grin. Of course. They climbed back onto the White Dragon and flew off to the left, soon arriving at another Blackstone tower. Aegon noted that the architecture here seemed universally built from black stone. Inside the Dragon Tower, under Talasia's guidance, Aegon began studying the foundational knowledge of blood mages. The material wasn't difficult for him. With a simple chip scan, he could memorize everything. But some of the more abstract concepts gave him a real headache. Having grown up in a world grounded in material reality, Aegon found it harder to grasp things like runes and visionary constructs than writing an entire thesis. You have an exceptional memory, Talasia said, evaluating him. It's just your comprehension that needs work. Aegon simply scanned and backed up the essential blood mage teachings into his chip. He couldn't rely on instant enlightenment to master them, so he would have to take his time and work through them slowly. After leaving the Dragon Tower, Aegon asked Talisia to escort him back to the Targaryen hills. My she-dragon just laid a pair of white dragon eggs. Don't you want to come take a look? Talisia pushed out her full chest with a slight lift. Aegon smiled and shook his head. My wife's dragon laid a pair too, and they're even bigger than yours, he replied tactfully. Talisia gave a soft chuckle, unbothered by his refusal. As they emerged from the abyss of Bloodsource Peak and stepped into sunlight once again, Aegon instinctively squinted to adjust to the sudden brightness. He glanced down toward the chasm below, an abyss so deep it seemed like a beast that could swallow the world whole. He couldn't even begin to guess how it had formed. Back at the Targaryen main castle, Aegon returned to a relatively quiet routine, only occasionally heading to Bloodsource Peak to consult Talisia on sorcery-related matters. Several months later, Aegon finally mastered the blood mage method for training spiritual power. This technique relied on achieving spiritual resonance with one's dragon. Similar to meditation, it simultaneously strengthened the minds of both the dragon rider and the dragon. However, its effectiveness was closely tied to the dragon's strength. The stronger the dragon, the more potent the feedback from the resonance. Even so, the actual results were disappointing. Every day, Aegon would descend to the bottom of the abyss and spend an hour resonating with Tiamat. Yet even with that effort, he was only gaining 0.1 spiritual power per month. And that was with Tiamat, a dragonlord. One could only imagine how painfully slow the growth would be for blood mages bonding with ordinary magic dragons. Another crucial aspect of the blood mage inheritance was bloodline synthesis. According to the legacy records, dragons were not created by Valyrians. As far back as the dawn age of the world of ice and fire, dragons already existed as powerful native beasts. The first blood mages, upon acquiring the bloodline synthesis technique, discovered that dragon blood, drawn from the mightiest creatures in the world, could merge seamlessly with the blood of the demigod, without any rejection. So they combined dragon blood and divine blood into their own veins, giving rise to what became known as true dragon blood. This part raised a question in Aegon's mind. The scrolls claimed the demigod already existed when Valyrians first arrived at the 14 Flames, yet the intelligence Aenar had gathered stated that the demigod creature didn't appear until roughly 2,000 years ago. The contradiction gnawed at him. After gaining a solid grasp of the synthesis techniques, Aegon built a personal lab beneath the Targaryen main castle, his own space to study and practice. He even formalized the work into a dedicated research project, calling it Seed of Life. The initial purpose of the project was to deeply explore bloodline synthesis, but its ultimate aim was to solve a challenge from Aegon's main quest, procreation. The Seed of Life would be created by fusing Aegon's own blood with Tiamat's dragon blood, then implanting it into other organisms. This would allow Aegon to pass on his bloodline not through traditional reproduction, but via genetic inheritance, fulfilling one of the quest's core conditions. If, one day, his bloodline were at risk of extinction, anyone who fused with one of his preserved seeds of life would keep his quest from failing. To begin the process, Aegon submerged a piece of his flesh in Tiamat's dragon blood. Thanks to the Shrank, Seed of Life talent tied to Tiamat's body, which had been restored to its full potential by divine blood, Tiamat had broken the shackles of life and could now evolve indefinitely. That trait was the very foundation of Aegon's confidence in the project. In his underground lab, Aegon prepared 22 culture dishes containing both his flesh and Tiamat's dragonlord blood. Every other day, he would come down to document the experiment's progress. He used his chip to run simulations and derive accurate results, adjusting the nutritional parameters of the dragonblood accordingly. By the second year, those tiny pieces of tissue had developed into distinct glandular forms. Aegon crouched beside one of the red vessels, staring closely. Inside the glass container, filled with nutrient fluid and dragonblood, floated a peanut-sized flesh node. Dozens of tiny tentacles extended from it, slowly writhing and stretching outward. It looked like a miniature tentacled planet, suspended in liquid. This thing kind of looks like a cancer cell, Aegon muttered, rubbing his chin with a puzzled expression. He wasn't entirely sure whether his self-taught approach to cultivating seeds of life would actually make them viable for human hosts. Maybe I should try it on a few rats first. He stood, retrieved the experiment log hanging from the wall, and began noting the latest parameters. After recording the data, he hung the log back up, then stepped out of the lab and removed his sterile isolation suit. After a quick shower, he made his way toward his bedroom. Recently, Daenerys had become pregnant again, which left Daenerys as the only one attending to him. Aegon had converted the bedroom into a suite tailored for intimate activities, complete with various implements. It wasn't that he was addicted to indulgence, this was all part of Daenerys' own plan to train and improve her talent. Her talent was Detire, Septon of Restraint 2, +1/5 spiritual power when managing and suppressing one's desires. Upon breaking restraint, gains reverse talent, Setire, Apostle of Lust. It was a dual-path talent with massive potential. Using his chip, Aegon could see the specific conditions required to upgrade it, and thus could provide artificial support to help Daenerys progress. At her own request, Aegon had remodeled the bedroom into a specialized training space. After instructing a maid to summon Daenerys, he began preparing for today's talent enhancement session. The requirement for unlocking Setire, Apostle of Lust, was to break self-restraint, something Aegon thought sounded quite simple. The little gadgets he had prepared for Daenerys were all designed to speed up the process. The status of Septon of Restraint 2 was unsurprisingly broken. See Apostle of Lust, physical needs plus 200%. Your physical desires are out of control. While in this state, your mental strength increases by 25 points. You can influence others' physical desires through physical contact. Upon completely restraining your own desires, you will unlock the reverse talent, see Septon of Restraint. Aegon looked at his unsatisfied wife and refused her attempt to go further. After all, letting Daenerys completely lose control wasn't what either of them wanted. He asked her to hold on for a bit, then pulled a long red object from the closet. Though he'd never formally studied the art, learning as he went wasn't a problem. With Daenerys' cooperation, Aegon managed to carry out the rather demanding task. He then hung it from a steel hook above the bed. Daenerys was suspended in midair, her body forming the shape of a character. Aegon, this isn't helping. I feel even more desire, Daenerys panted. As he continued, Aegon replied, Darling, you need to restrain yourself. Daenerys twisted like a beautiful serpent, moaning, I don't care, just give it to me. I want it. Make up your mind, do you want it or not? After several nights of such struggle, the couple finally achieved their goal. Daenerys successfully upgraded her talent to crank. See Septon of Restraint. You can freely control your own physical desires, and also restrain the desires of others. Mental strength plus 2/5. Aegon had Daenerys try her newfound power on him. In an instant, he entered a clear-headed, serene state, his mind empty and calm. He sensed that in this state, if he performed blood sorcery with a King dragon, his mental strength would likely grow faster than usual. The 25-point mental boost from the Septon of Restraint brought Daenerys' total mental strength to 124 points. For all innate abilities, increased mental strength had a broad and strengthening effect. That same night, after gaining the Septon of Restraint talent, Daenerys prepared to guide Aegon into one of her dreams as he slept, to help restore the physical energy he had just exhausted. But just as she was about to craft the dream, she accidentally noticed another dream glowing red in the void. This red dream loomed large, massive, in fact. If the dreams of ordinary people were like flickering candlelight, then this one blazed like a colossal, brilliant sun. As the Lord of Dreams, Daenerys instinctively paused her own dream creation, her curiosity piqued. Who in Valyria could possess a dream this vast? She wondered. Driven by curiosity, her soul floated like a feather toward the radiant red dream, shining like a sunship. She carefully reached out a finger, touched its surface, and poked a small hole. Her soul then transformed into a wisp of silver mist and drifted slowly through the opening into the red dream. Inside, she found herself on a vast, boundless grassland. Emerald waves of grass rolled with the breeze, stretching endlessly toward the horizon. Unlike the hazy, indistinct dreams of most people, everything here was sharp and vivid, as though reality itself had been perfectly reflected into this dream world. Every leaf vein, every dewdrop on each blade of grass, clear and unmistakable. Daenerys slowly materialized in the sky. She scanned her surroundings and, within moments, recognized where the dream had taken shape. The Valyria Grasslands. The Valyria Grasslands, the ancestral homeland of the Valyrians. Who could dream of such a place? Whoever it is, they must carry a deep love for the Valyrian people, and profound reverence for the ancestors, she thought. A faint smile curled her lips. As someone born and raised in Valyria herself, she couldn't help but feel a special affection for those who honored her lineage. She floated leisurely across the sky. Before long, she spotted a large nomadic tribe, with tents scattered neatly across the plains. As the Lord of Dreams, Daenerys could sense that the owner of the Red Dream was somewhere within that tribe. She descended and began her search. But no matter how carefully she combed through the camp, she couldn't find a trace of the dreamer. Just then, a young shepherd boy slowly returned from the outskirts, driving a flock of sheep ahead of him. The sheep bleated one after another, their voices echoing through the grasslands. The boy swung his leather whip repeatedly, calling out to keep the flock in line, his flustered but earnest efforts made for a charming sight. Seeing this, Daenerys felt a surge of joy. She had finally found the one she was looking for. Just as she was about to approach the little shepherd boy and have a bit of fun teasing him, a sudden and astonishing change erupted in the sky. It began with a series of deafening, thunderous booms. A blazing red comet streaked across the heavens, its long tail trailing behind like a blazing banner, lighting up nearly half the sky. The light it cast was so intense it outshone the noonday sun, flooding the entire dreamscape in a vivid crimson glow. The shepherd boy looked up at the sky as well, his young face filled with wonder and curiosity. All around, herders poured out of their tents, raising their hands to shield their eyes from the comet's piercing glare. Their expressions were a mix of shock and a growing fear of the unknown. Daenerys also looked up at the mysterious red comet, and the sense of unease in her heart grew stronger with each passing moment. The red comet, with its radiant trail, blazed across the sky like a meteor of divine fire. But instead of fading into the distance, it plunged downward at a speed that took one's breath away. As it approached the earth, it grew larger and larger, until even the roaring flames on its surface could be seen with the naked eye. With the comet's descent, the ground began to tremble violently. The quakes grew more intense, as if the entire dream world were a fragile eggshell about to be shattered by this immense force. Daenerys' eyes widened in awe as she stared at the spectacular and terrifying sight before her, unable to express the dread rising in her chest. The red comet tore through the sky, heading straight for the Valyria mountains at the edge of the plains like a divine judgment. With a deafening impact, it slammed into the mountains. In that instant, a massive earthquake erupted. The grasslands surged like the ocean, rippling in violent waves that rolled outward in every direction, leaving destruction in their path. Boom! A continuous roar followed the shockwave, like thunder rolling endlessly from the point of impact. The sound echoed outward, as if this sonic force alone could shatter the entire world. Fortunately, the 14 highest peaks of the Valyria mountains acted like an unyielding shield, absorbing the brunt of the blast. Thanks to them, the nomadic tribe was spared from total annihilation. But those 14 peaks had been ignited by the meteor's impact, setting off an enormous wildfire. Each mountain now burned like a towering torch, turning the sky blood red with their flames. After the calamity passed, the herders gathered together, faces pale with fear. One by one, they dropped to their knees before the Valyria mountains, chanting prayers and bowing low, believing this to be divine punishment, a warning from the gods. Only the little shepherd boy stood alone, still sucking on his fingers, dazed and unbothered. The firelight cast a crimson glow across his face. To Daenerys, the image before her was strangely inverted, like the boy was a god standing above them all, while the hundreds of herders bowed devoutly at his feet. The scene felt oddly surreal. And in that moment, everything clicked for her. Daenerys suddenly understood who the true master of this red dream was. The little shepherd slowly pulled his finger from his mouth, grinned foolishly, then raised a hand and pointed toward the mountain peaks burning like 14 blazing torches. He turned to the worshipping herders and shouted with delight, "Now that the ancestral mountain's on fire, why not rename it the 14 Flames?" Then, without hesitation, he turned and sprinted toward the blazing peaks. Behind him, a herder cried out, "Pan! Where are you going? The ancestral mountain's under divine punishment, that's hell itself." Pan glanced back, pointed toward the terrified sheep stampeding toward the flames after the quake, and shouted, "My sheep are running away. The gods can't have my sheep. If you'd like to support my work and unlock advanced chapters, you can follow me on Patreon. Up to 20 chapters ahead for now. Patreon com, BlurryDream. New translation, Elden Lord of Cinders. BlurryDream creators' thoughts. 5 comments 0 vote. Chapter 45. I'm not mad. Daenerys instinctively covered her mouth. The moment she saw the scene of worship, she had already guessed that this little shepherd boy was most likely the elder Pan. But hearing the herders call him by that name still shocked her to the core. Without hesitation, Daenerys activated her Dream Lord ability, making herself instantly invisible, then silently followed the shepherd boy from a distance. Pan, frantic with worry, was chasing after his flock, sprinting headlong toward the 14 Flames. But no matter how hard he ran, the sheep stayed just out of reach, as if guided by some mysterious force. Despite being out of breath and utterly exhausted, Pan refused to give up. His only thought was that he could not lose his sheep. At some point, a mysterious purple energy began to drift through the mountain air like wisps of smoke. As Pan and the sheep ran, they unknowingly absorbed the purple energy into their bodies, and their speed steadily increased. The chase continued until they reached the edge of a massive meteor crater. The lead goat, paying no heed to the danger of the cliff, suddenly leapt straight into the pit. The rest of the flock followed without hesitation, one after another, plunging off the edge like dumplings dropped into boiling water. No! Pan cried out as he watched his entire flock vanish into the abyss, despair flooding his eyes. In that moment, nothing else mattered, he could not let his sheep be lost. Gritting his teeth, he summoned all his strength and leapt in after them. Daenerys gasped and rushed to the edge of the cliff. Without thinking, she reached out, hoping to grab him before he disappeared. Just then, a figure in a crimson robe slowly rose from the depths of the crater, ghost-like in his approach. Elder. Daenerys whispered, her voice low and solemn. Pan now seemed to have recovered his awareness. He shook his head slowly, a trace of emotion flickering in his eyes. You shouldn't have entered my dream, he said quietly. Daenerys stared at him, eyes wide. As a Valyrian, why don't I have the right to know? The blood source peak and the Dragonlord Council under your control are pushing Valyria closer to ruin every day. Why destroy the Freehold? Why exterminate the families of the Dragon Dreamers? Pan lowered his eyes in silence, offering no response. Daenerys glared at him, filled with rage. She raised both hands sharply, and a surge of intense silver mist burst forth. The mist coiled into two nimble silver snakes, which darted forward, twisting rapidly toward Pan. But Pan remained calm. Eyes closed, his robe stirred without wind, rustling like silk. Just as the silver snakes closed in, an invisible force rippled outward from his body, effortlessly dissolving the snakes into specks of silver light that faded into the air. Daenerys watched her attack vanish uselessly and felt a wave of dread. She tried to tear open Pan's dream and escape, but the red dream had become as solid as reality itself. No matter what she did, she couldn't affect it at all. It's no use. From the moment I jumped into that crater, I was infected, and became one of them. I now possess the body of a demigod. Mortal power means nothing to me anymore. Pan opened his eyes and, in an instant, appeared beside her. Rest in my dream. Accept the correction, along with Valyria, he said, his expression blank. Rest. Correction. What does that mean? Daenerys gave up trying to resist and asked, confused. Pan sighed. No one's spoken to me about these things for thousands of years. You're lucky. I'll show you the truth. He brought her slowly into the sky, rising thousands of meters above the land. From this height, they looked down like gods, taking in the full view of the 14 flames below. Time in the land beneath them began to accelerate, playing out like a sandbox game on fast forward, so fast it was impossible to catch every detail. Daenerys turned to glance at Pan and understood immediately. He was showing her Valyria's past. The image of the shepherd Pan appeared again in the crater. This time, he was riding a lamb with bat-like wings, wobbling as it flew up from the depths. He returned to the tribe on the flying lamb and shared the bloodline synthesis technique he had obtained from the crater, openly, without holding anything back. Under Pan's guidance, a group devoted to blood sorcery began to emerge. Led by Pan, the nomadic tribe migrated to the 14 flames and built laboratories all around the crater. From then on, the blood mages began calling the crater Blood Source Peak. Then one day, a wild dragon wandered through the region, searching for a suitable nesting site. It happened upon the crater and was drawn to its strange environment, descending directly into it. That encounter between the wild dragon and the blood mages led to the dragon's capture. And so the wheels of fate began to turn. Over the following centuries, through relentless research, the blood mages succeeded in developing the bloodline of the true dragons. Our ancestors walked a long and painful road, enduring unimaginable hardships to build this vast empire for us, their descendants. How can you bear to destroy it so easily? Daenerys stared intently at the scene below, at the moment the first dragon tamer was born, as all the blood mages cheered in euphoria around the dragon rider. Her heart swelled with sorrow and anger, and she couldn't help but question him. Pan simply shook his head and let out a deep sigh. What you're seeing is only the surface, the fruits harvested in the pursuit of new knowledge. But you don't see the darkness buried beneath it all. And none of this, not even the horrors hidden below, is the real reason behind my so-called grand plan. The true root lies in the blood sorcery knowledge I obtained. It's fundamentally flawed. What flaw? Daenerys asked. This bloodline sorcery originates from a deity beyond the stars. It carries a terrifying corruption, one that slowly erodes our reason and drags our thoughts deeper and deeper into a pit of lust and depravity. Our people have changed, dramatically. Once simple and pure, they've become fanatical and unhinged. Some even lost their minds completely and began using blood sorcery to experiment on their own kin. As Pan spoke, his face filled with sorrow. He flew alongside Daenerys toward a grotesque laboratory deep inside Bloodsource Peak. Daenerys was stunned. Her eyes widened at the grotesque array of instruments and the sight of Valyrians struggling in agony on the operating tables, disbelief etched across her face. But, weren't you the one who led these bloodline experiments? She asked, unable to hold back. Pan's expression darkened. I've always opposed these inhumane experiments. But every effort I made to stop them failed. In the end, I lost control of the blood mages. They've become completely consumed by their endless pursuit of knowledge, truth, and desire, like sinking into a swamp with no way out. 4,000 years ago, I joined forces with House Valyries in an attempt to rein them in and bring them back to the right path. But I failed. The blood mages responded by forming the Dragonlord Council, and their behavior only grew more frenzied and extreme. They've strayed far from my original vision. But even so, you can't just decide to destroy Valyria because of that. That's madness. How are you any different from the blood mages you claim to despise? Daenerys demanded. Pan remained calm. The grand plan was never about destroying Valyria. Aegon simply never told you its true purpose. To those like you, who can foresee the future through dragon dreams, it may look like I'm colluding with the Dragonlord Council to bring about Valyria's downfall. To the Dragonborns who are directly involved in the plan, it might seem like we're extracting all the dragon blood from the people of Valyria to purify the divine blood within the pit, so that a dozen so-called chosen ones might gain eternal life. But the truth is, Pan slowly turned to face her, his eyes meeting hers. My true purpose is to use the dragon blood of those dragonlords, along with the blood of all Valyrians, to kill the star god that lies in the pit. You tricked Aegon too. Daenerys stared at him in shock. At that, Pan's long-suppressed emotions finally began to rise. It was as though this burden had weighed on him for centuries, and now, at last, he had found someone he could speak to. For the future of Valyria, these sacrifices will be worth it. If we can rid ourselves of the star god's influence, our minds will no longer be corrupted, there will be no more madness, no more descent into chaos. Everything I've done is for the sake of Valyria thousands upon thousands of years from now. Even if it means sacrificing every generation up until now, it's a price we must pay. If we can fully master blood sorcery, then one day, far in the future, our entire race will ascend together. It will be a future brighter than anything we've ever known. House Targaryen is the seed of that future. That seed will one day take root, grow, bloom, and bear fruit, nurtured by the endless river of time. Daenerys listened in silence, then shook her head with a bitter smile. Her voice trembled with pain and fury. You're mad. Truly, utterly mad. A complete lunatic. Hearing his dream dismissed so flatly, Pan's face twisted with emotion. His features contorted, and then he threw back his head and burst into manic laughter. Ha 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 ha. I'm not mad, I'm no lunatic. I am the chosen one, favored by the gods. Do you know how many gods have endorsed my grand plan? The Lion of Night. The ancient old gods. The Maiden Maid of Light. The drowned god. The many-faced god. Almost every god in this world has bestowed their blessing upon me. This is their will. The will of the divine. It is written, I will become a new god. Valyria will rise to true greatness under my guidance. You foolish mortal, watch with your own eyes, here in my dream, as I ascend to the throne of the gods. Ha 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 ha. If you'd like to support my work and unlock advanced chapters, you can follow me on Patreon.